T-minus 10, 9, 8,
The clock is operating. We're underway.
Tranquility Base here.
Endeavor, go at throttle up.
Mit meinem Kollegen Gennady. Wir begrüßen die Athleten und alle, die ihr versammelt seid in Athen zur Heimkehr der Olympischen Spiele. Im Geiste der internationalen Zusammenarbeit grüßen wir euch gemeinsam. Und in diesem Geiste reisen wir auch in diesem Raumschiff. Viele Nationen haben sich hier zusammengefunden in diesem Raumschiff und haben als Freunde einen Traum verwirklicht. Von 60 Kilometern hoch im Weltraum wünschen wir euch alles Gute und senden unsere Freundschaft. Auch wir schauen zu, von hier aus. 8 Kilometer pro Sekunde reisen wir, aber wir werden bewundern, wie ihr die 100 Meter sprintet. Gennady, komm, wir machen es mal.
Gennady Padalka und Michael Finke. Ihren Reiz haben sie nicht verloren und dass sich eine Idee über die Wirren der Zeiten, über die Schnelllebigkeit unserer Jahrhunderte so gehalten hat und ihren Reiz nicht verloren hat, das ist das eigene Faszinosum Olympia. Die olympische Hymne. Dem Symbol des Friedens, der Taube. Früher hat man sie ja noch freigelassen aus Käfigen. Umweltschützer, Tierschützer haben sich seit jeher dagegen ausgesprochen. Inzwischen macht man es virtuell. Und es gibt ja auch schönere, viel schönere Rituale. Zum Beispiel die Staffette der olympischen Fackel. Nicht in der Antike entstanden, sondern 36. Die Idee von Karl Diem war es damals als Organisator der Spiele von 36. Die Reise begann am 25.03. dieses Jahres. 10.000 Fackelträger überall in der Welt. Zum ersten Mal auf allen 5 Kontinenten haben sie getragen. In Europa ging sie durch alle ehemaligen Olympiastädte. Durch München, durch Berlin unter anderem. Erstmals war das Feuer auch in Afrika unterwegs. Eine weltweite Staffette über insgesamt 78.000 Kilometer. Otto Rehagel hat sie getragen, viele Prominente. Am 8. August, gestern noch Carl Lewis. Und die spannende Frage immer wieder am Ende einer solchen Eröffnungsfeier: Wer wird sie diesmal hier auf den letzten Metern tragen? Der Pulsschlag ist wieder zu hören. Die Spannung beginnt. Und hier ist der Erste.
Nikos Gallis.
Nikos Gallis, der Basketballer. Europameister 87 geworden. Im Übrigen in den USA groß geworden. 81 zurück nach Griechenland und hier ein Star, ein Superstar. Und er übergibt die Fackel an
Mimis Domazos.
Genauer gesagt Dimitrios Domazos, aber Mimis genannt. Fußballstar der 70er, sieht man an den Waden und am Schritt. Fußballstar von Panathinaikos Athen, damals im Europacup-Finale 71, das man 0:1 verlor gegen Ajax Amsterdam mit Johann Cruyff, aber wieder noch unterwegs ist.
Βούλα Μπατουλίδου για την Ελλάδα.
Das ist die Goldmedaillengewinnerin der Spiele von 92 über 100 Meter Hürden. Die damals ganz bekannt wurde durch einen Ausspruch, Dimitra.
Was ich auch ein bisschen angefangen habe zu sagen. Για την Ελλάδα, ρε γαμώτο.
Heißt wörtlich übersetzt, sag's ruhig.
Verdammt für Griechenland.
Verdammt nochmal, für Griechenland war's. Und das ist ein Schlachtruf geworden, der hier in Griechenland vielfach wieder zitiert wurde bei ähnlichen Situationen. Und sie übergibt hier
Akaki Kakiasvili.
Akakios Kakiasvili, Gewichtheber, eigentlich gebürtiger Georgier gewesen. 3-mal Gold gewonnen bei 3 verschiedenen Spielen, 92, 96 und 2000, liebevoll Kaki genannt. Das ist die Fackel, die es überall gab, einem Olivenblatt nachempfunden.
Er übergibt an Ioannis Melissanidis.
Übrigens aktueller Teilnehmer hier auch, Turner. Gold in Atlanta gewonnen. Einer, den es Dimitra zum Schauspiel zieht, zum Theater.
Er möchte nach Amerika.
Wer möchte das nicht? Als Grieche. An den Broadway berühmt werden, Geld verdienen und als Star zurückkehren in die Heimat, um sich hier dann später gut gehen zu lassen.
Nikos Kaklamanakis. Es ist Nikos Kaklamanakis.
Es ist der Surfer, der Goldmedaillengewinner von Atlanta, Zweiter in Sydney gewesen. Und er ist es also, und ihm ist es vorbehalten, hier die letzte Stafette zu tragen, die letzte Stafette zu absolvieren und das große olympische Feuer zu entzünden, das 16 Tage lang lodern wird, hoch über dem Stadion, auf einem Kessel, entworfen von Santiago Calatrava. Ein ebenso kühnes Bauwerk wie die gesamte Choreografie hier. Der Nachfolger von Muhammad Ali, von Kathy Freeman, von Rafford Johnson. Es ist die längste Fackel der Welt mit 31 Metern, entzündet von Nikolaos Kaklakamakis. Und mit einem Feuerwerk geht die Eröffnungsfeier zu Ende. Zur Feier der 28. Olympiade nach neuer Zeitrechnung. Schon morgen wird, wenn Sie so wollen, weiter geschossen. Die ersten Wettbewerbe, die Schießwettbewerbe. Das Radstraßenrennen mit Jan Ulrich, mit Andreas Klöden. Morgen also geht's los. Die 4x100 Meter Freistilstaffel der Frauen mit Franzi van Almsick, Sonja Pfeilschifter. Also, von morgen an geht es um Gold, Silber und Bronze in 28 Sportarten. In 301 Entscheidungen, eine mehr als Sydney. Das Frauenringen ist neu dabei. Säbel statt Florett. 10.500 Athleten werden von morgen an ihren ganz eigenen, ganz persönlichen olympischen Kampf kämpfen. Und wir, ein paar der 21.500 Journalisten, werden versuchen, die Spiele so wahrheitsgetreu wie möglich zu übertragen. Die 45.000 ehrenamtlichen Helfer werden ihren Teil dazu beitragen und die 70.000 Sicherheitskräfte hoffentlich dafür sorgen, dass alles friedlich über die Bühne geht. So friedlich und so stimmungsvoll und mit so viel Atmosphäre und Begeisterung wie hier die Eröffnungsfeier. Dimitra, wir haben ja die Generalprobe gesehen und wir waren einigermaßen beeindruckt. Wir haben uns gedacht, wer weiß, wie es denn ist. Denn ein paar Punkte waren natürlich noch offen. Die Überraschungen, wer trägt die Fackel, wer entzündet das Feuer. Was ist dein Eindruck?
Ich bin beeindruckt. Nico Kaklamanaki hat das beste Geschenk seines Lebens bekommen. Er hat nämlich in 6 Tagen Geburtstag.
Seit vielen, vielen Tagen ist Olympia allgegenwärtig hier in dieser 4-Millionen-Metropole. Das muss man ja mal sagen. Das ist ja auch ein Grundstück. An jeder Ecke weht der olympische Geist und holt einen ein. Und mit diesem Fanal hier, mit dieser Eröffnungsfeier, kann man, glaube ich, erstmal den griechischen Gastgebern ein großes Kompliment machen. Sie haben es geschafft, allen Unrufen zum Trotz, allen Skeptikern zum Trotz. Sie haben auf den Punkt die Eröffnungsfeier hinbekommen und die Wettkampfstätten fertiggestellt. Hier und da steht mal eine Tuya noch ganz schief.
Und was für eine Feier! Was für eine Feier!
Und damit verabschieden wir uns. Ich bedanke mich bei Dimitra Kusi. Hoffe, dass wir uns während der Spiele noch ein bisschen wiedersehen und dass wir noch gemeinsam die eine oder andere Begebenheit dann kommentieren können. Und gebe zu Norbert.
Seit rund 20 Stunden lodert das olympische Feuer im Stadion von Athen. 16 Tage lang soll die Stadt im Zeichen spannender und fairer Wettkämpfe stehen. Und Griechenland ist es gelungen, die ganze Welt mit einer spektakulären Eröffnungsfeier mitzureißen. Schließlich ist die Rückkehr der Spiele zu ihrer Geburtsstätte etwas ganz Besonderes. Michael K. berichtet.
Mit einem atemberaubenden Feuerwerk sagte Athen: Olympia, willkommen zu Hause. Griechenland ist bereit für die Spiele. Kurz nach 23 Uhr entzündete der griechische Surfer Kaklamanakis, Olympiasieger von 96, die gigantische 32 Meter hohe Fackel, die erst nach 16 Tagen wieder erlöschen wird. Die Choreografie der Eröffnungszeremonie spiegelte in magischen Bildern verschiedene Themen der Mythologie des Ursprungslands der Olympischen Spiele wider. 74.000 Zuschauer erlebten den Einzug der Teams aus 202 Ländern, so viele wie noch nie zuvor. Bundespräsident Köhler und seine Frau winkten Springreiter Ludger Beerbaum zu, der die deutsche Flagge trug. Allein aus Deutschland gehen mehr als 450 Athleten an den Start. Das Stadion bebte vor Begeisterung, als die Gastgebermannschaft als letzte einmarschierte. Außerhalb des Stadions, draußen, überall auf den Plätzen Athens, freuten sich die Griechen an den Bildschirmen über das, was Athen allen Bedenken und allen Unkenrufen zum Trotz auf die Beine gestellt hat. Ich bin sehr stolz auf mein Land. Das werden sicherlich tolle Spiele und ein großer Erfolg für Griechenland. Schon an der Zeremonie können Sie erkennen, es werden die besten Spiele aller Zeiten. Nach 108 Jahren feiert Griechenland seine zweiten Olympischen Spiele. Die Ringe leuchteten in einem künstlichen See mitten im Stadion. Mit einem fulminanten Finale rief Athen in die ganze Welt hinaus: Carlos Insate, herzlich willkommen.
So we are at the range 30 meters. We initiate the command Rabota work for the station keeping. It is initiated.
Progress continuing to ease its way towards its docking to the International Space Station docking scheduled about 4.5 minutes from now. Range is about 30 meters, closing at a rate of about 0.2 of a meter per second. Everything continuing to go very smoothly.
Can you see the picture? Yes, we can on board, but we cannot see the picture from the ground. Okay, now we can see it again.
And once again, we have our television picture back from the International Space Station's routing system. Once again, looking at the TV from the Progress resupply ship as it negotiates the final 20 meters between itself and the docking port of the Zvezda service module that you will see shortly move in right in between the crosshairs for the precise alignment between the Progress's forward docking mechanism and the docking port of the Zvezda service module itself.
In the center, can you see the picture? Yes, everything looks nominal.
The International Space Station and the Progress currently flying 225 statute miles over Central Asia, about 3 minutes away from docking, perhaps a bit less. The Progress moving very slowly but surely towards its link up to the station to complete its 3-day journey from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, carrying almost 3 tons of food, fuel, water, and supplies for the resident crew on board the station and the next residents who will be arriving at the station in October.
The range and velocity. Actually, this date, you cannot trust this date anymore. You just have to be oriented by the targets, and the targets look very good.
That docking target that you see at the lower portion of the aft port of Zvezda will be precisely aligned with the center of the crosshairs in the camera for the final few feet before contact and capture. Less than 15 meters between Progress and the station.
And we're aligning, and the target is in the center. Everything is nominal. Copy. And based on the display, the range should be 12 meters. Right, and we're aligning even better right now.
Now 10 meters between the two craft. Flight controllers standing by for contact and capture of the International Space Station.
Target is in the center. Everything is nominal. Great, and we're waiting for contact. When we have contact, we have capture. We'll copy.
Docking confirmed.
And the display went away.
Contact and capture confirmed at 12:01 a.m. Central Time, 1:01 a.m. Eastern Time as the two craft flew 225 miles over Central Asia. A perfect approach and docking by the Progress 15 craft, now a part of the International Space Station.
We were able to bring your parcels to you. Right, and everything was done automatically. Okay, and we copy and we see capture.
Again, this action occurred overnight, Friday to Saturday, Central Time. We're just leading up to the 12:01 a.m. Central Time Saturday docking of the Progress. These tape views were shot as the two spacecraft moved at an altitude of about 225 statute miles over Central Asia. ISS Progress 15 inching ever closer to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module, and this footage recorded late Friday and early Saturday. Progress docking actually occurred at 12:01 a.m. Central Time on Saturday. ISS Progress 15 in the final moments of its approach to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module. The docking actually occurred at 12:01 a.m. Saturday Central Time. And the ISS Progress 15 now in this downing footage recorded early Saturday morning, firmly docked to the aft end of the docking port of the Zvezda service module.
Gleiches Allmanöver. Pünktlich um 7:01 Uhr hat ein russischer Progress-Raumfrachter an der Internationalen Raumstation angedockt. An Bord 2,5 Tonnen Treibstoff, Wasser, Lebensmittel und Post für den russischen Kosmonauten Padalka und seinen US-Kollegen Fink. Seit April leben die Raumfahrer auf der ISS. Ihre Ablösung ist für Oktober geplant.
Der Jahrhundert-Hurrikan Charlie ist quer durch den US-Bundesstaat Florida gefegt und er hat bei seinem Zerstörungszug möglicherweise bis zu 60 Menschen getötet. Hunderte werden noch vermisst. 1,8 Millionen Bürger sind nach dem schwersten Wirbelsturm seit 1921 ohne Strom. US-Präsident Bush erklärte Florida zum Katastrophengebiet. Mario Turic und Volker Albers berichten.
Ein Hurrikan der Kategorie 4 geht an Land und das sind die Bilder dazu. Windgeschwindigkeiten bis Tempo 240 begleitet von einem furchterregenden Heulen und Getöse. Dächer werden abgedeckt, tonnenschwere Trümmer fliegen durch die Luft. Gewicht spielt keine Rolle, wenn ein Wirbelsturm ernst macht. Je näher der Hurrikan dem Festland kam, desto schlimmer wurden die Prognosen. Und schließlich endete am Freitag, dem 13. alles in einem Albtraum für den Sonnenstaat im Südwesten der Vereinigten Staaten. Aus der Karibik kommend erreichte Charlie gestern Abend die Westküste Floridas nördlich von Fort Myers. Anschließend zog er quer über den Bundesstaat hinweg weiter auf den Atlantik und bedroht jetzt in abgeschwächter Form die Küste South Carolinas. Wir haben alles Nötige getan, damit Hilfsgelder auch des Bundes an die Menschen gehen können, die vom Hurrikan betroffen sind. Und das sind zweifellos sehr viele. 6,5 Millionen Menschen lebten auf der Route des Hurrikans. Fast ein Drittel von ihnen blieben ohne Strom. Tausende verloren ihre Häuser. Die Versorgung der Bevölkerung mit dem Nötigsten hat jetzt Priorität. Wasser, Nahrungsmittel, Zelte müssen verteilt werden. Viele Menschen sind obdachlos. Stromverbindungen müssen wiederhergestellt und Tonnen an Trümmern beseitigt werden. Die Zahl der Toten wird in den nächsten Stunden steigen. Das Städtchen Punta Gorda erinnert an Ground Zero, sagte ein Mitarbeiter des Krisenstabes in Florida.
Nur wenige Stunden hat Charlie gebraucht, um diese Verwüstungen anzurichten. Wochen wird es allerdings dauern, bis es hier wieder aussieht wie vor der Katastrophe. Obwohl die Menschen gewarnt waren, obwohl sie alle möglichen Vorbereitungen getroffen haben, gegen die unglaubliche Naturgewalt eines solchen Sturms kann man halt nur bedingt etwas ausrichten.
Hurrikan Charlie war die schlimmste Naturkatastrophe in Florida seit Jahrzehnten. Experten schätzen den Schaden inzwischen auf umgerechnet 12,5 Milliarden Euro.
Hurrikan Charlie ist inzwischen an der Atlantikküste angekommen, und zwar in Südcarolina. Das ist hier dieser Staat. Und es gibt Hurrikanwarnung in North Carolina und in Virginia, weil der Ostwind das Wasser gegen die Küste treibt. Dann ein weiterer tropischer Sturm, der hat noch keinen Namen, der ist hier draußen zu sehen. Sie sehen hier unten die Küste von Südamerika und er zieht jetzt Richtung Karibik. Was daraus wird, wissen wir noch nicht. Und es gibt noch einen vierten, und das ist hier Daniel. Der hat inzwischen seinen Namen bekommen, ist noch ein tropischer Sturm und liegt so etwa 150 Kilometer südwestlich der Kapverdischen Insel. Das war's. Darüber werde ich Ihnen dann nächste Woche weiter berichten. Jetzt erstmal einen angenehmen Abend und einen schönen Sonntag.
Guillermo Arduino, who's been monitoring all of this. Guillermo, how's it looking?
Well, it's actually practically gone from South Carolina. I'm going to show you the latest radar then. The border is actually over here, and as you see over here, actually it's leaving South Carolina, only aligned here with rain showers or with rain. Most of the storm now is in North Carolina, and on the coast it's practically clear here, so it made landfall a while ago, and now it's bringing all that bad weather over there. Well, there are still some watches, and these are tornado watches. Within a hurricane like this, we have actually tornadoes possibly, and that's what brings about devastation as well. There are some things that I want to touch about this, apart from the path that it will continue to be downgraded into a tropical storm later on, because it doesn't have all the warmth of the waters and everything that needs for further development on the ocean now that it's inland. But John Zarella was talking about Punta Gorda. It's a town of 14,000 people. Now, I'm going to show you exactly what was going on a couple of hours ago in Litchfield, South Carolina. Let's take a look at the winds and all the rain that it brought with it. This is a serious situation. Fortunately, conditions are going to improve. This is right in the border with North Carolina, a little bit farther south. So the conditions are going to improve because the system is now mostly over North Carolina. But let's go back into Fort Myers, a bigger city, 500,000 people living there. Look at the damage that it's caused. This hurricane on Friday, you're going to see a reporter trying to do his job, debris flying. That is very dangerous. That causes injuries and also damage to material things. We see cars, we see planes actually flipped over, turned upside down. That's damage. Well, let's come back here. Let me show you what we have behind me here. Another man that is actually concerned about looting, and this is a rifle. So he's trying to take care of his stuff after he was affected by the cyclone. And here he's outside in his own porch with the same gun, and this is a gun, and this is a sign, a warning. Looters will be killed, because that's something that they're dealing with too. All right, let's see conditions for other centers city by city.
Bundesstaat Florida gezogen. 15 Menschen sind nach bisherigen Angaben ums Leben gekommen. Die Behörden befürchten aber, dass die Zahl der Opfer noch steigen wird. Vor allem in der Umgebung von Fort Myers, wo der Sturm besonders verheerend gewütet hat. Die Schäden belaufen sich nach ersten Schätzungen auf 15 Milliarden Dollar.
Florida nach dem großen Sturm. Mit mehr als 230 Stundenkilometern hatte Charlie gestern Nachmittag um kurz vor 4 Uhr Ortszeit die Küste erreicht. Die größte Naturkatastrophe in den USA seit mehr als 10 Jahren. Bis zu 2 Millionen Menschen waren von den Behörden aufgefordert worden, ihre Häuser zu verlassen. Zehntausende folgten der Aufforderung. Es war die größte Evakuierungsaktion, die dieses Land je in Friedenszeiten erlebt hat. Doch der Wirbelsturm nahm eine andere Richtung, als die Meteorologen berechnet hatten. Viel weiter östlich zog er über das Land und traf Gebiete, in die die Menschen geflohen waren. In dieser Halle wollten 1500 Menschen Schutz suchen. Am stärksten betroffen ist der Ort Punta Gorda, etwa 100 Kilometer von der Evakuierungszone entfernt. Niemand hatte damit gerechnet, dass der Sturm hier so schwer zuschlagen würde. Niemand hatte Vorkehrungen getroffen. Vor wenigen Stunden kam Jeb Bush, Gouverneur von Florida und Bruder des amerikanischen Präsidenten, hierher nach Punta Gorda. Die Situation sei sehr, sehr ernst, sagte er. Diesen Wohnwagenpark hat der Wirbelsturm völlig verwüstet. Es soll Tote gegeben haben, die offizielle Bestätigung fehlt bisher. Die Behörden vermuten jedoch, so heißt es, eine wesentliche Anzahl von Opfern unter den Trümmern. Soldaten der Nationalgarde sind nach Florida beordert worden. Präsident Bush hat für das Gebiet den nationalen Notstand ausgerufen und bereits Aufbauhilfe aus Washington angekündigt. Morgen wird er seine Wahlkampfreise durch den mittleren Westen der USA unterbrechen und selbst hierher nach Florida fliegen.
Downgraded to a tropical storm. The worst damage by far was in the Sunshine State. Florida Governor Jeb Bush began the coordination of a massive cleanup project. Because the storm veered away from its projected course, many Florida residents were caught off guard.
I've never lived through anything like this. I don't ever do it again.
Sandy McMaster and her husband Ken still had a standing mobile home in Punta Gorda, but just barely.
We're alive. That's what counts.
Down the street at a marina, the hurricane literally threw a small fleet of boats into a pile. Further down the road, one of the hospitals in the region was transferring patients. During the worst of the storm, staff had to improvise.
If windows would blow up, blow out, we'd shore them up. And then eventually we moved all the patients into the hallway.
In Punta Gorda, National Guard troops patrolled devastated mobile home parks to prevent looting. Downtown, the guitars at Frank Greathouse's store were covered with debris and beyond saving. Today, he doesn't know what his next step will be.
Don't have a clue right now. Just pick up the pieces, do what we can, and get on with the program.
Right now, it's estimated that more than 2 million residents in Florida are without electricity, and it could take days, perhaps more than a week in some places, before power is restored. Keith Oppenheim, CNN, Punta Gorda, Florida.
Let's get the complete weather forecast now. Here's Martin Jeans.
Thank you. Welcome back to the world weather. On Sunday, we'll be watching the northeastern United States, dealing with what's left of what was once our Hurricane Charlie. So still windy conditions here, further showers and storms. That'll all be pulling into New England during the course of Sunday, and eventually we'll find some showers, I think, pushing into Nova Scotia in Canada. We'll keep you up to date. But now another storm to watch and keep an eye on. It's our tropical storm Earl, and on Sunday it will be impacting the Leeward and Windward Islands with some windy conditions and some bouts of heavy rain. Earl is forecast to run into the Caribbean Sea as we head into the new week, and it could well develop, it is currently forecast to develop to hurricane force strength. A storm I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot about as we go into the new week. A typhoon blew into southeastern China over the past few days, most powerful to hit the region for several years, and officials have been studying the damage. Very severe damage. Take a look at these pictures, all caused by Typhoon Rananim. The death toll 115, leaving 1,800 people injured. Now, tens of thousands of buildings were destroyed. The early estimates put the damage in the region at nearly $2 billion. The whole region picking up the pieces from that huge storm. We are concerned because there is another storm now in the Pacific, which could well develop into a tropical storm. It's currently forecast to run just east of Taiwan. There is that area of low pressure we're concerned about. Current forecast track taking east of Taiwan into the new week. General direction of southeastern China. The forecast, of course, can change, and we will keep you posted, keep you up to date.
Nach Verschütteten. Die Aufnahmen aus Punta Gorda bei Fort Myers in Florida. Der Ort war direkt von dem Sturmtief Charlie getroffen worden. Noch immer werden in der Katastrophenregion hunderte Menschen vermisst. Offiziell wurden bislang 15 Todesopfer bestätigt.
Wie der Hurricane Charlie gewütet hat. Zerstörte Häuser in Punta Gorda im Westen Floridas. Hier waren die Menschen vom Wirbelsturm überrascht worden, denn der hatte wenige Stunden vor dem Aufprall auf das Festland seinen Kurs geändert. Dramatische Bilder vom Freitag, aufgenommen mit einer Amateurkamera. Mit Wucht fegt Charlie durch Wohngebiete, reißt alles mit sich. Wie Geschosse fliegen Teile von Häusern durch die Luft. Über die Zahl der Toten und Verletzten gibt es nur vorläufige Angaben. weil unter den Trümmern weitere Opfer vermutet werden. Rettungsteams suchen die Häuser oder das, was von ihnen übrig geblieben ist, ab. Der finanzielle Schaden wird auf rund 15 Milliarden Dollar geschätzt. Gouverneur Jeb Bush lässt sich mit einem Hubschrauber über das Katastrophengebiet fliegen. Er sagt, seine schlimmsten Befürchtungen hätten sich bewahrheitet. Sein Bruder George W. Bush, der US-Präsident, erklärte Florida zum Katastrophengebiet. Das bedeutet Hilfsgelder aus der Kasse der US-Bundesregierung. Hunderttausende Menschen in Florida sind ohne Strom. Auf den Straßen sieht es wüst aus. Viele haben ihr Heim verloren. Es war der schlimmste Wirbelsturm in Florida seit Hurricane Andrew 1992.
It brought images the people of Punta Gorda hoped they wouldn't see, but feared they would. Every block, every intersection, everywhere you looked, there was destruction.
It's our Andrew. It may not be, to the level of Andrew, but it's damn close. This exceeds any hurricane that has hit Florida since Andrew, certainly greater than Opal. It was far greater than Isabel last year along the East Coast. The destruction here is catastrophic. We have thousands upon thousands and thousands of homeless people this morning. The devastation in our beautiful city of Punta Gorda is extreme. We lost all 3 of our hospitals. Half of our fire stations were destroyed.
Trailer parks dot this retirement community. They were the hardest hit. Charlie's winds battered the wood and aluminum homes to bits.
I had planned to stay here, and the manager came and said, not a good idea. I'm glad I listened, glad he came.
Concrete block fared only a bit better. Using sledgehammers and crowbars, urban search and rescue teams broke down doors looking for survivors in this condominium complex. Hello? They found a handful of elderly people. They were okay. In other parts of the city, the National Guard was called in to protect property. Governor Jeb Bush came here, too, to reassure the people.
While this is a day of complete devastation and a real tragedy, and there's a lot of sadness in people's hearts right now, I'm absolutely convinced that within a shorter period of time than what we experienced with Hurricane Andrew, people's hopes are going to be lifted.
Dave Greenlee and his son William hope for that help soon. They left their home to look for food, water, and gasoline.
I don't know, we're just blank, we don't know what to do. There's nothing open, nothing to eat. Just trying to think how long we're going to go without electric,
Here, the calm after the storm has brought with it, for some, sadness, for others, relief. John Zarella, CNN, Punta Gorda, Florida.
Charlie hat in Florida mindestens 13 Menschen getötet. In den Trümmern von Wohnwagen und Häusern vermuten die Rettungskräfte aber weitere Opfer, so auch in dieser Wohnwagensiedlung in dem besonders betroffenen Ort Punta Gorda. Viele Bewohner hatten die Aufforderung der Behörden, die Gegend zu verlassen, ignoriert. Präsident Bush hat die Region zum Katastrophengebiet erklärt und finanzielle Hilfe zugesagt. Nach ersten Schätzungen beläuft sich der Sachschaden auf mindestens 15 Milliarden Dollar.
1,5 Tage nachdem Hurricane Charlie über Florida hinweggerast ist, suchen die Helfer noch immer nach Opfern und Vermissten. Bislang zählen die Behörden 13 Tote. Der Wirbelsturm überraschte viele Einwohner, weil er einen anderen Kurs genommen hatte, als die Meteorologen vorhergesagt hatten. Heute besuchte US-Präsident Bush das Katastrophengebiet. Aus den USA berichtet Mario Turic.
Selten bekommt US-Präsident Bush auf seinen Reisen so viel Leid und vor allem so viel Trümmer zu sehen. Dass er heute Morgen an der Westküste Floridas genau das erlebt, verdankt der Hurricane Charlie. Zerstörung, soweit das Auge reicht, kaum ein Haus hier konnte dem Wirbelsturm standhalten. Unsere Aufgabe ist es jetzt, so schnell wie möglich Hilfe hierher zu bringen. Und genau das geschieht in diesen Minuten. Die alles verloren haben, stehen ungläubig vor dem, was einmal ihr Heim war. Den Sturm haben sie überlebt, die eigentliche Herausforderung aber beginnt erst jetzt. Es ist sehr hart, sein zerstörtes Lebenswerk so zu sehen, aber wenigstens haben wir das Ganze sicher überstanden. Da war so viel Wasser und jetzt diese Verwüstung, sagt dieser Mann. Ich bin erschüttert. Was die Menschen in Florida erlebt und überlebt haben, dokumentieren diese Amateuraufnahmen. Auch so mancher Hurricane-Erprobte konnte nicht fassen, mit welcher Gewalt Charlie über das Land zog. Zurückgeblieben sind Tote und Verletzte. Dutzende Menschen werden noch vermisst. Feuerwehr und Nationalgarde sind im Einsatz. Vor allem Plünderer sollen durch die Anwesenheit der Soldaten abgeschreckt werden. 1 Million Einwohner hier an der Westküste Floridas sind auch heute ohne Strom und das möglicherweise noch für eine ganze Woche. Das Aufräumen wird noch viel länger dauern. Das hier kam durchs Fenster, das gehört nicht zu unserem Haus und zum Fenster geht's jetzt wieder raus. Einige nehmen es also mit Humor, andere sind entmutigt und frustriert. Viele ältere Menschen, die in Florida ihren Lebensabend verbringen wollten, stehen jetzt vor einer ungewissen Zukunft.
Singt hier übrigens Ketime mit einem Chor, aber natürlich singt die Oberbürgermeisterin, die wir eben gesehen haben, auch mit. Sie spricht aber uns fließend Deutsch.
Und es folgt jetzt die Nationalhymne Chinas, der Marsch der Arbeiter, auch dazu vorgetragen von einem Chor in traditionellen Kostümen.
Mesdames et Messieurs, l'hymne national de la République populaire de Chine. Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the People's Republic of China.
Unterdessen sind die Nationalflaggen von Griechenland und China hochgezogen worden, gehisst worden gegenüber der olympischen Flagge, die zum ersten Mal in Antwerpen gehisst wurde 1920.
Mesdames et Messieurs, le drapeau olympique d'Anvers pour la cérémonie de remise du drapeau olympique.
Dieses Symbol des modernen Olympismus, das wird die Bürgermeisterin von Athen nun überreichen an den Mann, der Stadt vorsteht, die in 4 Jahren die Jugend der Welt zu den nächsten Olympischen Sommerspielen begrüßen wird. In fröhlicher Form dahinter eine Brassband von Kalkina Kozanes. Zu dieser Musik wird die olympische Fahne nun aus den Händen Athens in die Hände Pekings wandern.
Die griechische Oberbürgermeisterin Dora Bakoyannis war übrigens hier in Athen in der deutschen Schule, die während der Olympischen Spiele als sogenanntes deutsches Haus den deutschen Athletinnen
zu erringen oder dort offen gebliebene Hoffnungen zu erfüllen.
So, es ertönt die olympische Hymne und wir erwarten das Absenken der olympischen Flagge.
Und diese Flagge wird dann nicht von 8 berühmten Sportlern aus dem Stadion getragen oder vielleicht von Nachwuchshoffnungen des griechischen Sports, sondern man hat sich etwas Besonderes überlegt. Es gab eine große Auslosung unter den 60.000 Freiwilligen, die hier in Athen im Einsatz waren. 8 von ihnen tragen die olympische Fahne aus dem Stadion.
Hier hören wir jetzt die olympische Hymne, die schon 1896 gespielt wurde, aber dann erst 1957 zur offiziellen Olympiahymne deklariert wurde.
Da spielt Grazie keine Rolle und auch der Gleichschritt ist egal. Es ist eine Verbeugung vor diesen freiwilligen Helfern, die kein Honorar bekamen, die keine Unterkunft bekamen, nur Bekleidung, freie Verpflegung und das Gefühl, dabei zu sein beim größten Treffen der Jugend der Welt.
So, nun heißt es auch Abschied nehmen gegenüber der olympischen Flamme. Und wir haben hier schon gesehen, ein kleines Kind, Foti Palianodinopoulou, eine Waise aus einem SOS-Kinderdorf und 2 Seglerinnen, Sophia Bekatoru und Emilia Zufler. Auch dieser Flammenkessel eine Idee des Architekten Calatrava. Sie beherbergte die Flamme über die vergangenen 16 Tage. Modern und doch Olympia angemessen.
Die beiden Segel-Olympiasiegerinnen haben diese Laterne von Fotini entzündet.
Und jetzt wird die Flamme weitergereicht. Zunächst an diese Kinder aus Athen und Peking und die werden sie wiederum weiterreichen an die Athleten dieser Spiele.
Hope to see you again. Καλή αντάμωση.
Olympia ist groß und gigantisch. Manchmal ist Olympia auch zu groß und zu gigantisch, aber ein kleines Pusten eines kleinen Mädchens hat gereicht, um die große olympische Flamme bei diesen Spielen von Athen erlöschen zu lassen.
Launch Director LC.
LC, this is the LD on 1. Go ahead. Yeah, just to confirm, we are scrubbing today's operation due to weather, and we will give you an update shortly about a 24-hour recycle.
Roger, copy, scrub for weather.
Copy that. It's scrub for weather.
Roger, I'd like to start detanking at this time. You concur?
LD copy concur, begin detanking.
The crew has been doing quite a bit of work in documenting the progress of Hurricane Francis over the western Atlantic. They've been doing so over throughout the weekend. We'll start some replays of the video that was downlinked by the crew with the video that was recorded earlier today about 7:38 a.m. Central Time. Right now, the western edges of this large storm are just starting to reach over the island of Puerto Rico. The item you see in the foreground of this video replay picture is the ultra-high frequency antenna on the outside of the International Space Station, used to provide communication with spacewalkers using American Extravehicular Mobility Unit spacesuits. Again, this is a replay, a video downlinked by Mike Feek on board the International Space Station as it orbited about 230 statute miles over the Atlantic, and Hurricane Francis continued to make a northwesterly coast toward the United States. This large, well-organized Category 4 storm is approaching the island of Puerto Rico at this point. These views taken as the International Space Station was traveling at its normal velocity of 17,500 miles an hour in an easterly course around the world. And was one of several opportunities the crew had to document the conditions of the surface of the Earth from their unique vantage point. In addition to looking at Hurricane Francis, today they also are going to have an opportunity in a few hours to take a look at some internal waves of the Tuamotu Archipelago. In the area of the Austral Islands.
Europe, your headlines forthcoming in about 5 minutes' time. First, a powerful Category 4 hurricane is roaring across the Caribbean and could hit the U.S. East Coast as early as Friday. In the Bahamas, residents are bracing themselves for Hurricane Francis after a warning for the southeastern islands was extended. Residents in Florida are also buying up supplies, with Francis expected to make landfall there in a matter of days. Now, the hurricane comes less than 3 weeks after Hurricane Charlie, the worst storm to hit the United States in over a decade. That battered Florida, causing billions of dollars in damage. Well, let's find out what's going on with that storm and indeed get a look at your global weather forecast for the regions that you may be watching in. Femi Oke, as ever, at CNN's International Weather Center for us. Femi.
Hello there, Becky. So now seems like as good a time as any to recommend you take a look at cnn.com/hurricanes, cnn.com/hurricanes. You'll see pages like this one, a couple of really interesting pages. This one tells you where Atlantic hurricanes form, and then you can click on and it shows you the circulation of the air, which makes these incredible monster storms that form over warm water. And then finally, you can see if you took a slice and sliced through a hurricane, what it would look like in an animation form. cnn.com/hurricanes also has all the latest news and the weather news about our hurricanes and tropical systems around the world. This is Hurricane Francis. I'm just swirling it around a little bit so you can see how big it is. In the categories 1 to 5, this is a 4, which makes it a monster storm. Earlier on today, I spoke to a journalist who's just here, just before the main part of the hurricane crosses him in Turks and Caicos Islands. And the hurricane continues to track further across towards the west, a little bit towards the north as well. The southern section of the Bahama Islands are now on hurricane warning, which means they will see the hurricane in the next 24 hours. So they need to be on alert there. As we move away from a hurricane, which I can still actually see here on our satellite picture, pushing across through towards the western side of Europe, more wet weather moving across through towards the British Isles.
More than 1 million people have been ordered to leave their homes in Florida as dangerous Hurricane Francis takes aim at the southeastern United States. Now, the entire city of Miami Beach has been told to evacuate. Even people inland in cities like Orlando are taking no chances and battening down for what forecasters are calling a monster storm. The hurricane warning covers much of Florida's eastern coast, from Florida City to Daytona Beach. Right now, Francis is lashing parts of the Bahamas. British Airways say they're cancelling their Friday flights to Nassau. Several British flights to Florida have also reportedly been cancelled. Well, let's get a look at the global weather forecast, and specifically, of course, to the region that's being affected by Hurricane Francis. Femi Oke is at CNN's International Weather Center. It's looking pretty awful out there, isn't it, Femi?
Hello there, Becky. It absolutely is. It's a very dangerous storm indeed. Let me show you a view that we don't often see. This one comes from the International Space Station, and ironically, it looks quite stunning and beautiful from all those miles up there in space. What a spectacular hurricane it is, but incredibly powerful. The wind speeds can get up to 249 kilometers an hour. The rain could be up to 50 centimeters in any 1 hour. It's an incredibly powerful tropical system. Head back here towards the World Weather Center. I want to show you the track, which takes us past Nassau, and then by Saturday and Sunday heading inland into Florida. So no wonder those evacuations are taking place. Not just right about the exact point where the storm is going to head into land. It's such a big storm that almost the entire eastern coastline of Florida is affected, which is why they have had so many evacuations take place. It's not necessarily the point where it lands that could be the most dangerous. So we head across from that hurricane. You can see it quite beautifully here. Just want to point something else out to you. A lot of our Atlantic hurricanes come off that west coast of Africa. This looks very suspiciously like something is developing in those warm waters of the Atlantic. It's the warm water that fuels the power for those hurricanes and tropical systems to develop. So we head across the Atlantic, more rain waiting in the winds for that western side.
Geschwindigkeiten von über 200 Kilometern pro Stunde über die Bahamas hinweggefegt. Nach ersten Berichten wurde niemand verletzt. Jetzt ist Francis auf dem Weg nach Florida. Dort sind 2,5 Millionen Menschen aufgefordert worden, ihre Häuser zu verlassen. Der Hurrikan wird voraussichtlich morgen die amerikanischen Küsten erreichen.
The Category 3 storm is now slamming through the Bahamas and is expected to continue its march towards Florida on Friday, with a landfall forecasted for late on Saturday. More than 2 million Florida residents were told to leave their homes, some fleeing to shelters. The hurricane could gain strength before striking the east coast of Florida. Strong winds and heavy rain is expected to affect a large part of the state because the system is moving at a slow pace. Well, for more on the hurricane, let's get the latest from Femi Oke. She's at CNN's International Weather Center. Femi.
Hello there, Becky. Since we last spoke, the hurricane has slowed down somewhat. The wind speeds have dropped just a little bit, about 185 kilometers an hour about here. How do I know that? Well, I also looked at some most recent video we have from Abaco Island in the Bahamas. Let me show you the kind of wind speed that this can do. This is over 100 miles an hour, so even though this hurricane has dropped in intensity, the wind speeds have dropped down, it's still very dangerous indeed. Head back here towards the World Weather Center. Of course, the most important thing is about what that Category 3 can do. Those intense winds up to 209 kilometers an hour still can destroy buildings, which is why we're very concerned of where it will be going to next. Taking some while to clear that northern section of Bahamas, and then we follow it. Just watch the days very carefully as we head up towards Florida into Friday evening. Then it's Friday and into Saturday before it crosses into Florida and then begins to take a path up there through that southern section of Georgia and then beginning to diminish somewhat. But the real problem with this storm is there's an awful lot of rain in it. It could be absolutely disastrous. Well, weather will be here with all the latest on Francis. But for now, back to Becky in London.
Mother Nature's version of a lumbering, seemingly mocking giant. Hurricane Francis still in a threatening yet slow-moving stance just off the coast of the southeastern U.S. state of Florida. The storm has been pounding the Bahamas since Thursday, and now people in Florida are bracing for the impact. Dave Malkoff is in Juno Beach.
The latest is that the storm keeps picking up and picking up. Every time that we get a lull, then the next squall that comes through is much more difficult to get through than this squall. So right now we are here on Juno Beach, where a lot of people have evacuated from. You can see the winds are really picking the sand up. The sand is really flowing like water. The amazing thing about this storm that I can tell you about is that we're getting little to no rain. Not much rain through this storm, but look at this. If I just lean back and lean into this storm, it's just going to support me. Pretty much support my weight depending on how fast these winds are coming in. We talked to the meteorologist back at our station in Miami, WFOR. That meteorologist was telling us that we are experiencing in this area 80-mile-an-hour gusts. That's not sustained winds, that's just 80-mile-an-hour gusts. So when it goes whoosh, that's 80 miles an hour at the top level. Another problem with these storms is the storm surge. Now, if you live inland and you've never experienced a hurricane before, what happens is, you know how there's low tide and there's high tide? Well, it becomes higher tide. So high that the tide will raise about 30 or 10 feet. Look at this. Look at this. Pieces of foam. Watch when this next wave comes through. It is turning the ocean into suds. And these suds are blowing around as if they were suds from your bathtub. Whoa, we're getting a little bit of the water on us now. The water is picking up here. Hold on, our photographer doesn't want to go that far into the water, and I don't blame him. Not with the camera on his shoulder. Mario, let's just kind of walk up here. That'll be safer for the both of us. Wow. This and folks, this is not even the full brunt of the storm. The full brunt of the storm is coming, but it's not even here yet. And even when it does make landfall, it's projected to make landfall 20 minutes north of here.
And incredible, the power of Mother Nature. Mari Ramos is keeping track of this hurricane, massive hurricane, as well as a typhoon in the Pacific, a very stormy day in the world. She joins us now from the International Weather Center with details. Hi, Mari.
Hello there, Elita. Well, we definitely are following several storms. Just take a look at our current world weather map here. You know, I've been popping up that world weather at CNN.com address, and we're getting inundated with emails about all of these storms going on around the world. Let's go ahead and start you off. First of all of you that have questions about our Hurricane Francis here. These are the current winds that are being reported. Juno Beach, probably right around here. Winds there right now, 40, 50 kilometers per hour, gusting to nearly 60 or 70. That's that report that you just saw just a few seconds ago. Well, winds there are beginning to pick up quite a bit. Notice on both sides of the coast, we are getting some pretty strong gusty winds. And when we look at our satellite image here, you'll notice the storm's still pretty much stuck in the same place. Now, it is edging closer and closer to the Florida coast. That's going to help improve the weather somewhat for you in the Bahamas, especially the southern, central Bahamas, but northern Bahamas still getting pounded. Grand Bahama Island winds up to 130, 140 kilometers per hour in the last report. Now, here is the storm. This right here is the closest thing that we're going to get to an eye wall, because the eye is generally a little bit frayed with this storm. It's not as clear as you can see some other hurricanes or typhoons. But notice the rain now spreading all the way out into the west coast. Take a look over here a little bit closer. This right here, this is where the really heavy rain and also the very strong winds are going to come in and approach the coast. This is it. This is what they've been waiting for. Now, the storm will continue moving very, very slowly, and that's going to mean that this rain and these heavy winds are going to stay over Florida at least maybe 10, 20 hours, dropping tremendously heavy amounts of rain. Those of you that had questions about southern Florida, here's Naples, here's 75 or Alligator Alley, already some very heavy rains into this area. As you head down into Miami, also getting some very strong rain. Now, here is the track of Francis, expected to move across Florida and reemerge into the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, possibly as a tropical storm, and then head to the north into the southeastern U.S. Well, here's our address once again, world weather at CNN.com. A lot of questions about Ivan. Well, here is Ivan in the middle of the Atlantic. Right now, a tropical storm, but it is expected to become a hurricane and move possibly by Wednesday or Thursday across the arc of the Antilles here, the northern Antilles. So if you're traveling into this area, which is also a question that comes up quite a bit, you do need to call ahead and see what is going to happen. So I have some tips for those of you that are traveling. This is a question that comes up over and over and over again. First of all, call your airline to make sure that your flight is still on. Now, if you're cruising, if you're on a cruise ship, it's a little bit different. You may end up at a different port of call. Your cruise may be canceled or even diverted. And remember that air and seaports are going to close. Most of them stay open, but they close as the storm gets closer and closer. So no matter where you are in the world, you can use some of these tips. If you decide to stay in an area that's going to be affected by a storm, check around to make sure that you don't have to be evacuated. And remember to inquire about shelters in your region in case you do have to go. There's more weather. Here are cities all around the world.
Stadt Florida zu, ab dem späten Abend wird dort erwartet. Die ersten Ausläufer des inzwischen etwas abgeschwächten Wirbelsturms haben die Atlantikküste der USA bereits erreicht. In mehr als 70.000 Haushalten fiel der Strom aus. Hunderttausende sind auf der Flucht, Notunterkünfte wurden eingerichtet. Schwere Schäden hat Francis zuvor auf den Bahamas verursacht. Dort war ein Mensch ums Leben gekommen.
Raumspaziergang der aktuellen ISS-Besatzung ist ohne Pannen verlaufen. Die beiden Astronauten wechselten eine Pumpe des Kühlsystems aus und montierten 3 Antennen für den Bordfunkverkehr. Nach 6 Stunden kehrte die 9. ISS-Besatzung ins Innere der Station zurück. Im Oktober werden die beiden Männer abgelöst.
If there are aliens out there, this radio telescope in Puerto Rico might hear them chattering away. It records signals from outer space and may have found something unusual. A signal detected last year could be the first contact from another world. It appears to be coming from somewhere between the constellations of Aries and Pisces, and no one knows quite what it is. Computer users in Britain have been involved in analysing the signals from outer space.
This one has been looked at several times and is continuing to transmit and baffle everybody. That's certainly interesting, but it does not mean it's an alien transmitting. It just might be.
It's one of the biggest mysteries in science. Is there life elsewhere in the universe? And if there is, that would transform our understanding of the world around us.
To seek out new life and new civilizations.
In science fiction, they've been boldly going in search of aliens for decades, but scientists remain doubtful that the extraterrestrials have finally got in touch.
Well, it could be something not quite so exciting as aliens, but still very exciting for astronomers, which would be some kind of astronomical body that we've never seen before, and we're just detecting now from its radio waves. Or it could be just not very exciting at all and turn out to be a problem with the instrument or with the software that's analysing it.
This may well be a false alarm, but the search for aliens in space will continue. Christine McGurty, BBC News.
Hau ab, Francis, haben die Menschen überall auf ihre verbarrikadierten Häuser geschrieben. Fraglich, ob das hilft. In der Nacht war der Wirbelsturm über die Bahamas gefegt. Über den Inseln verlor der Sturm zwar an Geschwindigkeit, richtete aber große Schäden an. Ein Mensch starb dabei. Über dem Meer auf dem Weg nach Florida hat er noch einmal mächtig zugelegt und viel Regen getankt. Wer es nicht geschafft hat zu fliehen, hat sich in Schulen und öffentlichen Gebäuden versammelt. Wir haben Angst, das ist ein ziemlich großer Hurrikan. Wir haben die letzten Tage unsere Häuser verrammelt. Hoffentlich geht das gut. Ein fürchterliches Gefühl, wenn du dabei bist, ein Haus zu verlieren. Wenn es nachher wirklich nicht mehr da ist, ziehe ich um und gehe nach Norden. Rund 4.500 freiwillige Helfer aus anderen Staaten sind mit Ambulanzen auf dem Weg ins Sturmgebiet. Ganz schön mutig, denn auch sie können leicht zu Opfern werden. Die Menschen in ihren Schutzräumen hoffen, dass sich Francis über dem Festland wieder abbricht.
Tja, und für uns ist Stefan Bachenheimer in Juno Beach. Ich habe mich vorhin mit ihm über die aktuelle Lage in Florida unterhalten.
Also hier ist der Ausnahmezustand erklärt ganz klar. Das, was wir jetzt hier im Hintergrund sehen, das ist eigentlich noch nicht mal der Anfang des Hurrikans. Der Hurrikan wird erst hier heute Nacht, genau hier, kommt auf uns zu, hier an der Küste in der Gegend von Juno Beach und West Palm Beach aufschlagen. Erst ab Mittag, also in 3 Stunden unserer Zeit, werden erst Hurrikanwinde erwartet. Also hier ist man auf diesen Hurrikan vorbereitet. Wir wissen, es sind ungefähr 2,5 Millionen Menschen aufgefordert worden, die Gegend zu evakuieren. Und Francis ist zwar ein Kategorie 2 Hurrikan, das heißt, er ist nicht mehr so stark wie erwartet und auch nicht so stark wie der Hurrikan Charlie, der vor 3 Wochen Florida verwüstet hat, aber er ist wesentlich langsamer und wesentlich größer. Er ist fast doppelt so groß und durch seine langsame Geschwindigkeit, wenn er erstmal hier auftrifft an Land, dann hat er eben sehr viel mehr Zeit mit seinen starken Winden und extremen Regen die Gegend zu zerstören. Und das ist eben ein Grund, warum man eben so viele Menschen aufgefordert hat, die Gegend zu verlassen.
Storm that is moving slowly but ominously through the Atlantic Ocean. Mari Ramos has been tracking it for us. A very busy day for you, Mari. How's it looking at this point?
Well, Colleen, we do have some changes as of the 11 o'clock advisory. Before I get to that, let me go ahead and give you guys our world weather address here. It's worldweather@cnn.com, and we're answering some of your emails, and Karen from Germany and everyone else that has been writing from all over the world asking your questions. I'll try to answer some of these now. First of all, let's go ahead and start with the current winds. They continue to increase along the Florida coast. Now, over here in Melbourne, right there, 69 kilometers per hour. Now, there are gusts that are being reported that are already at hurricane strength. That means in excess of 120 kilometers per hour, particularly in this area. And this is the reason why. Take a look at the storm. You see the satellite image here and the radar underneath, so you can see some of those heavier rain bands already beginning to move in. Now, as of the latest advisory, from the center of the storm, hurricane force winds were extending some 165 kilometers from the center of the storm, and tropical storm force winds were extending out about 295 kilometers from the center of the storm. So definitely a huge, huge system. Now, the eye, or the center of the storm, appears to be about 130 kilometers. And here you can see that a little bit better. It looked like it was starting to develop what we call an eye. Now, when that happens, it is an indication that the storm could be intensifying, and that is one of the things that the National Hurricane Center is advising when it comes to the storm, because it seems that once it moves into a more favorable area, back out into the open water, no longer friction with land, it could intensify just a little bit, and it's already a very strong Category 2 storm, winds at 165 kilometers per hour. We could actually see the storm intensify even a little bit more, very close to a Category 3 storm. So that kind of changes things warnings just a little bit. You'll notice over here lots of wet weather and rain that is very heavy, that is continuing to move from north to south. And if we get a little bit farther to the south, here's another picture of that. This, the Fort Lauderdale area, and down here you see Miami, Florida. We are tracking several storms, and that is just one of them. We also have our tropical storm Ivan in the middle of the Atlantic here. This one is forecast to become a hurricane, by the way. We'll be tracking that one as well. And we also have Typhoon Sangda in the eastern Pacific, in the western Pacific. Let's go ahead and take a look at cities now all around the world.
Brought us up to date on its condition and its course. But let's take a look at some of the pictures from earlier. This thing's still packing plenty of punch as it moves along. At least one death blamed on this storm so far. Major flooding already reported in some areas. Reports from the Freeport area say that the airport there, Freeport, Bahamas, that would be, is partially submerged at this point. This hurricane's moving about 7 kilometers an hour. It's left U.S. residents waiting and worrying, and as Mari Ramos just pointed out, it looks like it is developing an eye, which may indicate that it is intensifying.
Sind vor wenigen Minuten nach 2 Sicherheitszwischenfällen vorsorglich geschlossen worden. Wir haben es schon kurz erwähnt. Nach Angaben eines Flughafensprechers ist beim Durchleuchten des Gepäcks eine Taschenlampe explodiert. Dabei sind offenbar 7 Menschen verletzt worden. An einem anderen Terminal ist außerdem offenbar ein verdächtiger Mann festgenommen worden. Daraufhin wurden sofort alle Starts ausgesetzt. Eingehende Flüge dürfen allerdings weiterhin landen. Weitere Informationen sind zunächst nicht bekannt. Der US-Bundesstaat Florida bereitet sich auf den schlimmsten Hurrikan seit 100 Jahren vor. 2,5 Millionen Menschen haben sich bereits in Sicherheit gebracht. Nach Prognosen von Experten könnte der gigantische Wirbelsturm die teuerste Naturkatastrophe der USA werden. In diesen Minuten trifft er auf das Festland. Ulrich Oppold und Volker Albers berichten.
Die ersten Vorboten von Hurrikan Francis fegen zur Stunde über die Urlauberstrände von Florida und peitschen meterhohe Wellen an die Küste. Es ist ein mächtiger tropischer Wirbelsturm, etwa doppelt so groß wie Deutschland, der schon auf den Bahamas erheblichen Schaden angerichtet hat. Mit Windgeschwindigkeiten von bis zu 165 Kilometern in der Stunde fegte er über die Inselkette. Eine 18 Jahre alte Frau starb, eine Sturmflut überschwemmte ganze Landstriche und immer noch sind tausende Menschen ohne Strom. Auf seinem Weg von den Bahamas Richtung Florida hat sich Hurrikan Francis etwas abgeschwächt. Dennoch bedroht der Wirbelsturm mit Orkanstärke einen 450 Kilometer langen Küstenstreifen.
Die Nerven liegen blank. Seit Tagen warten die Menschen hier auf Hurrikan Francis, aber bisher zierte sich die Dame. Was wir hier sehen, sind gerade mal die ersten Vorläufer des Sturms. Die Windgeschwindigkeit wird sich in den nächsten Stunden verdoppeln. Dabei sind die Sturmböen vermutlich gar nicht mehr die größte Gefahr. Viel mehr Angst hat man mittlerweile vor den erwarteten Überschwemmungen.
Und sintflutartiger Regen hat schon in der Nacht eingesetzt. Die Behörden haben insgesamt 2,5 Millionen Menschen aufgefordert, sich in Sicherheit zu bringen. Viele Urlauberhotels in Florida wurden geräumt, die Menschen in Notunterkünften untergebracht. Es ist die größte Evakuierungsaktion in der Geschichte des Bundesstaates. Eine Sturmflut bedroht die Küste, denn der Hurrikan wirkt wie ein riesiger Staubsauger. Der Meeresspiegel steigt vorübergehend stark an und überschwemmt die Küstenregion bis weit ins Landesinnere. Dazu rechnen Meteorologen mit monsunartigen Regenmengen von bis zu 500 Litern pro Quadratmeter. Schlimmer als Hurrikan Charlie vor 3 Wochen könnte Wirbelsturm Francis eine der teuersten Naturkatastrophen in den USA werden.
Er breit und er bewegt sich nur langsam voran. Das ist es, was den Menschen in Florida zurzeit besonders viel Angst vor Hurrikan Francis macht. Millionen sind aus ihrem Zuhause geflohen, viele harren in Notunterkünften aus. Seit der Wirbelsturm Teile der Karibik verwüstet hat, ist er zwar schwächer geworden, trotzdem stellt sich Amerikas Sonnenstaat auf eine verheerende Katastrophe ein.
Noch tobt Francis draußen auf dem Meer, doch die Vorboten haben das Festland bereits erreicht. In der Nähe von Palm Beach an der Ostküste Floridas haben heftige Sturmböen erste Schäden angerichtet. 200.000 Haushalte sind ohne Strom. Aus Angst vor der Katastrophe haben sich viele Einwohner in Sicherheit gebracht. Die Notunterkünfte sind überfüllt. Ich habe zu Hause die Fenster vernagelt, aber ich weiß nicht, was mich erwartet, wenn ich hier wieder raus kann. Wir haben erst vor 2 Jahren unser Haus gebaut. Es erfüllt alle Vorschriften zum Schutz vor Hurrikans. Wir hoffen einfach, dass alles gut geht. Über 1 Million Menschen haben ihre Häuser verlassen. Es war die größte Evakuierungsaktion in der Geschichte Floridas. Viele Straßen ins Landesinnere waren Tag und Nacht verstopft. An einigen Tankstellen waren die Säulen leergezapft. Auch Zahlreiche Krankenhäuser entlang der Küste wurden komplett evakuiert. Niemand hier nimmt den drohenden Hurrikan auf die leichte Schulter. Mit aller Wucht ist Francis bereits über die Bahamas gezogen. Strom- und Telefonleitungen wurden zerstört. Ein Mensch kam ums Leben. In der kommenden Nacht nun soll der Hurrikan Francis mit orkanartigen Winden und Rekordniederschlägen den Süden Floridas erreichen.
Well, the rim of Hurricane Francis is soaking Florida's southeast coast. It's expected to hit the U.S. state full force overnight or early Sunday morning. Meantime, the center of this storm is making its way through the Bahamas. So far, one death has been linked to the storm. Carl Penhall reports now from the island of Grand Bahama.
For several hours, the town of Freeport in the island of Grand Bahama was in the eye of the hurricane. That led to a decrease in the wind speed. But now, as the tail of the hurricane passes across this Bahamian island, the wind speeds are picking up again, back into hurricane force. We've tried to talk to the weather experts to find out precisely what's going on. We caught up with them, though, in a Freeport hotel. They had to evacuate the weather center at the airport overnight. 6 feet of water, waves driven by those high winds, came through the airport and started to crush the side walls of the airport, leading to their evacuation. They say that the last wind speed they registered was 86 miles an hour. After that, the wind pulled off the equipment off the roof of the airport. No more readings. Since that, this morning in the early hours, we're told by the authorities that islanders in many of the low-lying areas of Grand Bahama had to be evacuated, areas that weren't foreseen as flood risk areas. But more than 200 people in the early hours of this morning took to their rooftops because of the rising floodwaters. They were brought from their homes to safe areas by fire trucks and other four-wheel drive vehicles. They are now in safety. But yes, widespread flooding. The area of Grand Bahama was without power, and some of the telephone lines are also down. Carl Penhall, CNN, Freeport, Grand Bahama.
All right, well, let's move the story a little bit north now to the U.S. state of Florida, where Francis is prompting the largest evacuation in that state's history. More than 250,000 people have fled. If you want to get a sense of the size of this storm, think of Germany and think of a storm nearly twice the size of Germany. And it's now about 100 kilometers right off Florida's West Palm Beach coast, and that is where Sean Calebs is standing by. Sean, go ahead.
Colleen, you're exactly right, and we have been feeling the effects from Francis for hours now. Torrential rain's been coming down, very steady fashion. Wind right now is not blowing as hard as it has been. We have seen some satellite images of Francis, that massive hurricane closing in on the southeastern portion of Florida, and the eye is not terribly far from where we are now, but every now and then we get a big, hefty gust like this one. And we can tell you there's already been a certain degree of damage from Francis. Across the intracoastal waterway here in Florida, you can see a bit of Palm Beach. That, of course, a very well-known, affluent area. Between West Palm Beach and Palm Beach, some 80,000 people live there, and we're told that a lion's share of them heeded the evacuation warnings, and they left over the past couple of days. Power is off in a number of areas, and also trees, power lines, signs, they've simply been overburdened by the intense winds and the combination of rain. You can see trees down all over this area. Power lines have been down too. Authorities have time and time again urged people not to come out in this storm. Now, yesterday they were concerned it would hit Florida as a Category 4 storm. That's with winds of close to 160 kilometers per hour. Well, it has weakened somewhat, only somewhat. It is still a very powerful storm, and it is making its effects known. It is going to hammer the state of Florida for hours and hours. This amount of rainfall that's coming down, they thought it may build something between 8 and 10 centimeters, but now they expect it's going to be well over that. And let's give you an idea of exactly how bad this is. If you can see the street, Florida is a very flat state, and this rain is already building up, and this main drag here is becoming simply swamped. The storm drain up there is simply overburdened, and here's some of the foliage that is blown off of this whole stream of royal palms down in this area. So, Colleen, really a very scary situation for people in this area, and it's something that is going to continue for hours and hours and hours.
All right, Sean, thanks very much. Be careful out there. Let's turn it over to Martin Jeans now, who's in a drier spot watching this storm here. Martin, when you see this thing on the satellite map, it's unbelievably big. And one of the images I saw, it looked almost like you could see the eye kind of forming there.
You're right, Colleen, actually. That eye has become much more clearly defined over the past, literally the past hour, actually, since I came on shift here. Here's the view from space. You can't see the eye too clearly on this, so let's zoom in, actually, and take a look at our radar, which we've already been showing you. And there it is, as you say, that really quite defined eye, which has really reappeared now, all that convection wrapping around it. The center, actually, officially now, is about 130 kilometers east of Palm Beach, Florida, and it's very slowly drifting, it looks like, from the satellite in a westerly direction. But you can see those thick rain bands which have been pummeling Florida now for some considerable time. We can zoom in, actually, on some of the regions which have been seeing the heavier rain, all the way really from Cape Canaveral right down to Fort Pierce there. And of course, the winds have been picking up. In fact, just checking the latest maximum sustained winds, we're not looking at gusts here, 80 kilometers an hour around Cape Canaveral there, 96 around the region there, down there close to Palm Beach. So the winds really increasing, certainly over the past hour or so. Now, that forecast track, very important, of course. This is such a slow-moving storm, and that's the key, really. We'll see rain falling in the same areas again and again and again. But this is our current forecast track. We think most likely along the red line, but, you know, it could well drift a little bit further north or a little bit further to the south in this orange cone here. So the heavier rains will hit Florida and much of central parts of the country late Saturday into Sunday, and eventually by Monday a tropical storm pushing across the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, affecting the panhandle of Florida, and eventually that rain pulling into parts of southwestern Georgia and southern Alabama. So a huge area affected by this storm. And you know, we are looking a little ahead now because we have another storm in the Atlantic which may well become another hurricane and heading towards the Caribbean as we head into the middle portion of next week.
At least 2 people are dead, another missing in the Bahamas as a result of Hurricane Francis. Francis has been pummeling the Bahamas since Thursday, packing winds of about 170 kilometers an hour. One official says things could get worse as the back of the storm hits the islands. Areas of Grand Bahama Island now under more than 2 meters of water. Officials say there are power outages in several areas and that they've lost contact with many of the islands. Meantime, Francis is edging its way ashore in the U.S. state of Florida, heading north. The storm is nearly twice the size of Germany, and it is expected to hit full force overnight or Sunday morning. Anderson Cooper and meteorologist Chad Myers have more now from Melbourne, that is on the southeast coast of Florida.
The wind here is really picked up, as Jackie Jarrett said it was going to. Chad, do you know how fast this wind is right now?
I just got a wind gust there. That was 71 miles an hour right there, and that was the worst gust we had. But you could see it coming. Go back out to the marina here. You can just see how we lost visibility. All of this rain shower activity. This is the storm. This is the wind that Jackie Jarrett was talking about just about 15 minutes ago. And clearly, this is the worst we've seen. You can't even stand up, really.
Yeah, Jackie had said that within the hour, winds were going to be up to 60 to 80 miles an hour. Chad just saying 71 miles an hour. You used to be able to see visibility. If you look at the marina shot, visibility used to be much more. You can't see more than a couple of 100 feet at this point. Winds really picking up even as we're speaking. We're a bit concerned about a lot of these like light posts. They look like they are about to go. They are really wobbling at this point. The boats in the marina really having a hard time.
You can't even look at the rain. It's so hard. It feels like just stinging ice on your face. It's really getting bad now.
And you anticipate it getting worse?
Absolutely. It might even get double this bad. I mean, we're talking about that multiplier thing, right? If the wind speed doubles, it's 4 times as more powerful, more times more power. So if this is only 71, we've got 40 more miles an hour to go, bud.
And we have been waiting for this storm for quite a while now. The residents of this area have been waiting as well. There are some 60,000 people in shelters at this point, according to the Red Cross. That is up from 21,000 people on Thursday night. There are, at this point, at last estimate, according to Florida Power, 1.45 million people without electricity, and the full brunt of this storm has not even hit this area. One can only imagine how many people are going to be without power in the coming hours, in the coming days.
All right, now for an update on Francis and the rest of your international forecast. Martin Jeans joins us now from the Weather Center. And Martin, just seeing the images of this storm and hearing the wind like that is awesome enough. But when you see it on the map and on the radar, it is incredible as well.
You're right, Colleen. A huge storm. In fact, let's check out the satellite and see how it looks from space right now. Huge storm. Just see Florida there. Not much of it actually under the spiral arms of our hurricane. There's Cuba, but it is a massive storm. And you know, it's pretty much stalled. It's not moving anywhere fast at all at the moment. It has a really huge eye in the center, and you know, that's picked up really well on our radar here. That eye is something like 110 kilometers wide. That's about 70 miles wide. A huge eye. And that's a real concern because in the center of the eye, actually, within just a few hours, we saw the report from Melbourne there, we could find sustained hurricane winds moving in, so things really going downhill. These are actually the current wind gusts reported across Florida. 72 kilometers an hour then around Cape Canaveral. Down to the south there, you can see in excess of 100 kilometers an hour. Now, this is the all-important forecast track, then a very slow-moving storm this, but we think making landfall probably early on Sunday, somewhere south of Melbourne in eastern Florida, and then weakening to tropical storm strength quite rapidly as it pushes across central regions of the state, but dumping copious amounts of rain. We're probably talking along the path something in excess of 600 millimeters, and then pulling itself to the northwest then, probably still as a tropical storm as it moves back over the warmer waters of the Gulf of Mexico. So we could see that heavy rain pulling into the panhandle of Florida and eventually into southern Georgia and also into southern Alabama early next week. And as I've been saying, that's not the end of it, because we are monitoring another storm, which is right now a tropical storm out here in the Atlantic. But this is also forecast to become a hurricane, and that'll also be marching in and towards the Caribbean as we head into the middle portion of next week. Lots to talk about and update you with, but right now, Colleen, back to you.
I was sleeping in bed, and the next thing I knew, I just heard things crashing in. I was looking up at the ceiling, and I looked up and I see things coming in. I rolled over to one side, and next thing you know, the whole roof was coming in on my head.
While the eye of Hurricane Francis is still miles from shore, residents of the U.S. state of Florida are already feeling the effects of the storm. Francis is nearly twice the size of Germany, and it's expected to hit full force within hours. Meantime, the storm had a major impact on the island of the Bahamas. At least 2 people are dead and another missing in the Bahamas as a result of Hurricane Francis. For more on the path of Hurricane Francis, let's go to the International Weather Center and our own Martin Jeans. Martin.
Hi, Andrea. You're quite right, actually. That storm, twice the size of Germany. Plainly to see, actually, as we look at our satellite, our view from space on Hurricane Francis spinning around just off the coast of Florida with that huge eye. That eye is so big, it's something like 70 miles wide. That's 110 kilometers in width. Huge eye, and very deceiving, because in the center of it, calm conditions. If folks are actually in the center now, they may be forgiven for thinking the storm is over, but soon enough they'll be hitting the backside of Hurricane Francis. Now, moving very slowly to the west-northwest. That's been the feature of this storm on Saturday, just lumbering along, hardly noticeable, but all the time we have seen those outer rain bands pounding that southeastern coast of Florida, and I think it will not be too long before we begin to see those sustained hurricane force winds begin to move into coastal areas there. And indeed, north of where the hurricane makes landfall, that's the region we'll be watching for the potential for tornadoes. Now, these are the current maximum, in fact, the current gusts reported across the east coast of Florida. They're not sustained winds, but gusts. 91 kilometers, I can see they're reported around Cape Canaveral. And down there, close to Palm Beach, close to 90 kilometers an hour. But as I said, things only really set to get worse in this region over the next few hours. This is the current forecast track. We think eventually the hurricane making landfall probably south of Melbourne on the east coast of Florida early on Sunday morning. And then taking its rains, when I say rains, a lot of rain, we're talking about in excess of 600 millimeters along the path there, probably across central Florida, that path then into the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, probably remaining a tropical storm as it pushes into the panhandle of Florida by Monday. But torrential rain certainly will be the main feature of this storm. An even more powerful storm we're monitoring, a typhoon, Songda. Now, this really is posing a big threat to the Ryukyu Islands later on Sunday. This is a massive typhoon, actually almost super typhoon strength right now, and the forecast track changed radically. Originally, it was forecast to run into southeastern China, but now it'll be the Ryukyu Islands on Sunday, then taking a twist to the northeast there, probably going actually across through the Korea Strait, with very heavy rains for West Japan and also for South Korea. More on all these storms later, but Andrea, back to you right now.
Thank you, Martin. Now, our sister network, CNN USA, has been extensively covering the storm as it hit Bermuda and headed towards Florida. Here's Anderson Cooper and Gary Tuckman reporting from Florida, the Florida coastline, just a short time ago.
There had been a little lull, actually, about 20 minutes ago. Not much rain, relatively little wind, but you can actually see a squall approaching, and it is definitely here. It is very strong. You can see the whitecaps on the intercoastal waterway, making it look like the Atlantic Ocean there. Let's bring in Chad Meyer, CNN meteorologist. Chad, how bad is it right now? What kind of wind temperature?
Right before we came on, it was 71 miles an hour, Anderson. And that was probably a good 65. But I was up on top of the causeway just a few minutes ago. We did a package from up there, and the wind speeds there were well into the Category 2 hurricane. We were at 95 miles an hour up there. But now you have to remember, that's almost a football field higher than we are down here. A little bit of friction down here slows it down. But up there on the causeway, it was scary. It was scary in a really big truck.
We're in Melbourne right now. There's Melbourne Beach, which is a barrier island, and there's a bridge crossing over into Melbourne Beach. They've shut down the bridge, though.
Absolutely. We had to show them our ID. We had to sign a release that said they're not responsible, and they're not coming to get us. Right. That was so we did that and got up there and got back in a big hurry.
We were just looking at a radar on your laptop computer in the car. You see, I mean, you can literally see one of these big bands, one of these bands of the storm, one of these squalls, which we actually saw approaching us.
Isn't it amazing? It really is. You can see it coming. You can prepare, and you're saying to yourself, well, there it is. It's 2 miles away. Oh, there it is. It's 1 mile away. And all of a sudden, it's 100 yards, and then it picks up, and it just goes from 50 to 75 in a big hurry.
And then there's this lull. I mean, we were in a lull about 20 minutes ago where, you wouldn't know there was a hurricane coming.
And it wasn't raining either, right? I mean, yeah, exactly. Up on top of the bridge, when you were down here, I was doing that. It was coming at us in sheets, and the rain is now coming at us in sheets here. Every time one of those fingers goes by, one of those outer bands, then you get the wind to pick up, and then when it goes by, it drops off, but it's going to stop dropping off here pretty quickly. It's just going to be one constant wind speed as soon as the whole core, the Mac Daddy part of the eye, gets very close to us. Moving to the west-northwest at 5, the eye will pass to our south, which means we're actually in the bad quadrant of the storm. We'll get more wind than what they say.
Did you just say the Mac Daddy part of the storm?
Mac Daddy, yes.
I wish you wouldn't use these fancy meteorological terms with us, though. I take it by Mac Daddy of the storm, you mean the heart of the storm, the big kahuna.
Everybody looks at the eye and they say, oh, the eye is going to make landfall here. But you always want to look at the eastern part or the northern part of the eye wall. There aren't really that much, there's not that much wind in the eye itself. It'll be gusty, but it won't be 105 or 110 miles per hour. Just outside that eye wall where that big storm is, where that causes the eye, it creates the eye, that's where the heaviest winds will be, and we're going to be right in it.
At what point does it become too dangerous? I mean, at what point does it become too dangerous to stay here?
I think we're in good shape because we're about 15 feet above sea level. When the storm surge, if a storm surge comes in, it's going to be maybe 6 to 10 feet. So that water is really going to come up pretty high. And many of these boats that are just sitting here actually could come loose. That's when it's going to be dangerous. That's when we're going to get out of here. When stuff starts flying, debris starts flying, and boats start floating like they shouldn't be.
Yeah, if you look down to the marina right now, we had actually planned on being down there on the water's edge. But the big fear really is that some big gust could actually take one of these boats and just bring it up on land and hurt somebody.
Absolutely. They have little stands on the bottom, and obviously on the hull you can see there's 2 little stands on the bottom and 1 in the middle, but that's not holding very much up. They could easily get knocked over.
And you anticipate this all night long. I mean, we're here till the morning.
Dude, absolutely. We'll be here until 4 a.m., no problem, and the winds will be 100 miles an hour then, and they're not going to slacken off probably until early tomorrow morning. We were down the road a little bit, and people are already losing shingles, and it's just one after another, and these winds are yet to pick up. We have another 30 miles an hour to go yet.
Florida, this is the biggest city of St. County. This is roughly halfway between West Palm Beach to the south and Melbourne to the north. And this is the marina, the intercoastal waterway. The Indian River is also called right here. But a half mile away from Hutchinson Island, next to Hutchinson Island, a half mile away is the Atlantic Ocean. This entire area where we are and the area island over there evacuated, and we have not been able to find anyone who is still in their homes on Hutchinson Island. The authorities are very happy about that. To give you an idea of what kind of devastation you can have during a hurricane and how people get hurt and killed, this is a great example. This is a light. I think weighs about 50 pounds. We think it may be 45 to 50 pounds. It was on top of a 25-foot light pole behind me, and we heard the noise. It fell down. And that's what can happen. That's why you have to stay away from things like that. Put it down here because they could possibly repair that later. That's Hurricane Andrew. Whatever it is, that's a big thing about this. Most of the hurricanes we cover, like Charlie 3 weeks ago, it was powerful, it was damaging, it was devastating, but it only took a few hours of these heavy winds before it was over and the cleanup began. This is like the eternal hurricane. People have been in shelter since Thursday night. In this county, you have 5,000 people alone who have been in shelters. There's only 200,000 people who live in the county. And as we now know from our meteorologist, this is supposed to continue until tomorrow. And the eye over the eye isn't even here yet. We've been pelted by rain and winds down here in this part of Florida for about 7 or 8 hours.
And that was CNN USA's coverage of Hurricane Francis that you've been watching.
100.000 Haushalte sind ohne Strom. Zwar nahm die Windgeschwindigkeit ab, doch weitet sich das Auge des Hurrikans auf mehr als 100 Kilometer aus. Die volle Wucht des Hurrikans wird Sonntag früh erwartet.
In West Palm Beach, wo Francis wahrscheinlich aufs Festland treffen wird, fegten bereits am Morgen heftige Orkanböen durch die Straßen. Zahlreiche Bäume sind umgeknickt, Autos wurden beschädigt. An der gesamten Ostküste Floridas brachten die ersten Ausläufer des massiven Sturmgebiets immer wieder starke Wolkenbrüche. Meteorologen warnen vor massiven Überflutungen. Gefährliche Sturmfluten mit bis zu 5 Meter hohen Wellen werden erwartet. Rund 2,5 Millionen Bewohner des Sunshine-Staates sind weiter auf der Flucht. Es ist die größte Evakuierungswelle aller Zeiten. Es ist hart, wenn man alleine ist. Außerdem muss ich meine Katze zu Hause lassen. Sie hat geweint wie ein Baby. Ich habe ihr aber gesagt, dass ich bald wieder daheim bin. Experten sagen, dass Francis mittlerweile doppelt so groß ist wie der Hurricane Charlie, der vor 3 Wochen erhebliche Schäden in Florida angerichtet hatte. 27 Menschen waren damals ums Leben gekommen. Wenn Francis auf die Küste Floridas trifft, wird es seit 1950 das erste Mal sein, dass 2 große Stürme in solch kurzer Zeit hintereinander den US-Bundesstaat heimsuchen. Francis hat zwar mittlerweile an Wucht verloren, dennoch wird er aber wohl mit rund 170 Kilometern in der Stunde über Florida hinwegrasen. Die Meteorologen gehen davon aus, dass der Wirbelsturm bis Sonntagabend den US-Bundesstaat durchquert haben wird.
I'm sad for people that are going to have a lot of trauma and a lot of tragedy in their life because of this storm.
The governor of the U.S. state of Florida expressing concern as Hurricane Francis moves in. We'll give you an update on this hurricane when we come back. Hurricane Francis has officially made landfall on the eastern coast of Florida. Winds were measured at 168 kilometers per hour in some parts of the state on Saturday night. More than 1 million Floridians are without power. The storm pounded the Bahamas with torrential rain and high winds for several hours on Saturday before heading to the U.S. Officials say many parts of Grand Bahama Island are underwater, and 1 person there is reported missing. Well, let's check the progress of this storm. For the latest, we turn to Jenny Harrison standing by in the Weather Center. Jenny, it's going to be a long day.
It really is, Jonathan, particularly in the last hour. Not a great deal has really happened. This storm hasn't made a great deal of progress. You can see here on the satellite image the larger view further away to show exactly the size of the storm, how it really does just cover most of Florida. And then when you get ever closer, you begin to see, obviously, the eye of this storm. Now, the eye is continuing to make its journey westwards. The whole storm continuing to move a little bit further on to land. But in fact, as I say, it's very, very slow moving. Now, the red box indicating the tornado watch, this will remain in effect for quite a few more hours yet, taking us into Sunday morning. And you can see the yellow areas indicating the heaviest amounts of rain, but really the rains are just completely unrelenting across much of Florida's central regions in particular. Now, if you just look a little bit closer again, you can see that about 50% of the eye of this hurricane has now made landfall. But in fact, some of the worst conditions are going to be still to the north, and in fact almost just in the northeast quadrant of this whole system. So still some particularly heavy amounts of rain expected, and again some very, very strong winds. Now, the winds really haven't relented again in the last few hours, and gusts still very high. Some gusts reported just recently of 117 kilometres an hour, but bear in mind those are just the reported gusts. There could well be some that are higher than that. And although the system is now 50%, or the eye 50% on land, the sustained winds really have not dropped at all. 168 kilometres an hour, gusting closer to 200, and it's going to take us through much of Sunday before the system even makes it across much of Florida. So still many hours with the system just continuing to bring at least half a metre of rainfall to some areas. Meanwhile, we're also following the progress of Tropical Storm Ivan. It's just in the corner of the screen there. Now, this could well strengthen throughout Sunday and become a hurricane. For now, winds about 111 kilometres an hour, and I don't know if you can see the forecast track, but it's taking relatively the same track that Hurricane Francis took when it first began its journey through the eastern end of the Caribbean. But of course, also, this is our Typhoon Songda. This has changed position, or should I say changed direction, the forecast direction drastically in the last few hours. It is now going to be turning right up towards the northeast and impacting western areas of Japan and much of the Korean Peninsula. Very strong here, winds sustained at over 220 kilometres an hour. It'll just continue to bring some very heavy amounts of rain to areas that, of course, have just so recently seen those terrible floods from recent previous typhoons. But, of course, Hurricane Francis has our focus for now. More in the next few hours. Jonathan.
Florida authorities are asking residents to be patient as this slow-moving storm crosses the state, and as Jenny mentioned, it's going to be a while. Florida officials don't want people to be lulled by the calm caused by the huge eye of this storm as it crosses land. At one time, this eye nearly 100 kilometers across. The state's governor says emergency aid will be available once Francis passes.
Well, we're going to need a lot of help, and thankfully we're going to get it. I've talked to the CEO of the Red Cross, and she's told me that this will be the largest recovery effort, relief effort that they've ever been involved in. And FEMA probably has the largest effort underway that they've ever been involved in our state. Clearly, we've never done anything quite like this. So we are staging trucks and water and ice and food and volunteers in safe harbors in Atlanta and other places ready to come down when the storm finishes, and we will be on the ground as quickly as possible.
Before Florida Francis hit the Bahamas, at least 2 people dead, another missing there as a result of this hurricane. Carl Penhall has been following the storm on the ground from Freeport in the Bahamas.
Waves batter the Grand Bahama shoreline. Wind and driving rain bend the palm trees.
Houses are being blown apart. We're asking them to go into bathtubs, to hold on to anything that's safe, and to just stay where they are.
As the eye of the hurricane passes over the island, the winds drop. But homes like this have already been ripped apart. Some residents have taken refuge on the roof. Every available vehicle pulls frightened islanders to safety, away from the danger of storm-driven tidal surges. Rising floodwaters cover vans and cars. Those who dare wade to slightly higher ground. Police are already reporting deaths and disappearances, but that's not the end of the hurricane. As the tail of Francis lashes into Grand Bahama, winds seem more vicious than ever.
But the back end seems to be far worse than the front of it. The front went by and it gave us a false sense of maybe it's going to be okay real soon. That's not the case as we speak.
Police decide to take this bulldozer on a mission to the north side of the island to rescue an elderly couple who'd refused to abandon their home. We join Assistant Police Commissioner Greenslade and his emergency team. The airport's been flooded, SUVs smashed, fallen trees everywhere. The winds are too powerful. About 100 yards from the home of the couple police are searching for this site, a luxury home partially destroyed. We're back in the emergency services control room now. There was no way police could get to that elderly couple. Rescuers say now they must wait for the winds to subside before they can mount their next rescue attempt. Carl Penhall, CNN, Freeport, Grand Bahama.
The slow-moving Francis has been pounding much of Florida's east coast since early Saturday, and as Jenny mentioned, this is expected to continue Sunday as this storm moves very slowly inland, west over Florida to the Gulf of Mexico. Jay Gray is one of the many reporters who was out in this storm, and he has a sample of what this hurricane's 160-kilometer-an-hour winds are doing to coastal communities.
With nightfall, the storm stepped up its intensity. This mobile home was ripped apart. There were fireworks from Francis up and down the coast. Blown transformers and downed power lines left at least 2 million without power. Conditions were so severe, police used armored personnel vehicles to patrol and enforce the curfew. Though much earlier in the day, many made a last dash to safety. Thousands are waiting and watching Francis from shelters. Wind gusts close to 100 miles an hour sucked the roofs from homes. Traffic lights hung by a thread. Boats ripped from their moorings were tossed around like toys. All day and all night, Francis continued to pound the Florida coast with no clear end in sight.
Well, the powerful winds and rain already prompting U.S. President George W. Bush to declare the state of Florida a major disaster area. John Zarella is standing in it in West Palm Beach with the latest. John, lucky you.
Yeah, lucky me, Jonathan. Lucky for about the past 6 hours. What you're seeing right now is pretty much what it's been like for the last 6 hours here. Actually, within the last hour, it was significantly worse than it is right now. But we have had this driving rain, wind-blown rain, arcing of transformers in the distance. You can see the palm trees behind me. They've pretty much had it. They've taken a beating. All the palm fronds have been broken down and broken off. So far, none of the trees themselves have fallen. There's a significant amount of water here. The water has really come up within the last couple of hours. The ground is just so saturated that even here in the parking lot, the water's coming up right from the drains. It's just nowhere for it to recede to any longer. And we're getting one of those real gusty squalls right now. We had wind gusts up to 100 miles an hour here in West Palm Beach within the last couple of hours, and certainly sustained at hurricane force within the last couple of hours as well. And we're on the south side of the storm, so we were in the eye wall for the last 6 hours. Never got the central calm that comes with a hurricane in the center of it. Always in the worst of the weather on the south side, and we're getting the backside of the hurricane coming at us now. So we will continue to get this kind of weather. Perhaps they say for another 4 to 6 hours before it lets up. So for a good 12 hours, we will have been battered by this kind of weather. Jonathan?
Two quick questions for you, John. You've been through a lot of these. Is it going to be a wind event or a rain event in the back half? And then once the sun comes up, what's the worst that people have to face?
Well, the back half many times is worse than the front half. So a lot of the worst weather, the toughest winds and rain, are going to be in the back half of the storm as it moves onshore. The back half still hasn't moved onshore yet because it's moving so slowly. And people will wake up to the fact that there's no power. A couple of million people in the state of Florida now are without power from this storm. The power may be out for days in many areas. A little further up the coast in the Fort Pierce area, they really took a beating up there. Don't know about structural damage. Certainly some structural damage that's going to be noticed in some of those areas further north. We don't know. It's so difficult in the middle of the night. You're confined to one area to gauge how bad it is elsewhere other than just around your immediate areas. But clearly there's going to be considerable amount of damage, probably from a structural standpoint, not the significant damage that we saw 3 weeks ago as we did in Hurricane Charlie that knocked down buildings and really demolished whole areas, but that was a major, major hurricane. This one covers a long, large, broad area with sustained winds of 100 miles an hour, gust up over 100. So there's going to be quite a cleanup facing everyone. Jonathan?
Indeed, John. I should add that the thought of sunrise was figurative and optimistic at best. John Zarella reporting live from West Palm. Well, World News continues right after the break. We'll have more on CNN.
Winde mit einer Geschwindigkeit von 150 Stundenkilometern, entwurzelten Bäume, knickten Strommasten, deckten Dächer ab. Millionen Menschen sind derzeit ohne Strom. In vielen Küstenorten sind die Sandstrände weggespült worden. Momentan bewegt sich der Hurrikan ungewöhnlich langsam ins Landesinnere vor. Es drohen deswegen schwere Überschwemmungen. Claudia Rödel.
Der Hurrikan Francis wütet im Sonnenstaat.
In der Nacht deckte der Sturm die ersten Häuser ab, tosende Winde knickten Bäume und Masten um, dazu heftiger Regen. Es ist ein Albtraum für die Menschen in Florida. Doch die meisten sind nicht mehr hier. Mehr als 2,5 Millionen sind ins Landesinnere geflohen. Es ist die größte Evakuierungsaktion der Geschichte Floridas. Wer hier geblieben ist, suchte Schutz in den vielen Notunterkünften. Wir sind aus eigener Entscheidung hierher gekommen. Wir haben 3 Kinder. Wir dachten, das Beste, was wir tun können, ist so schnell wie möglich Schutz zu suchen. Mehr als 2 Millionen Häuser in Florida sind inzwischen ohne Strom. Der Hurrikan reißt immer wieder die Kabel entzwei. Die größte Gefahr, der Funkenflug kann leicht die umliegenden Gebäude in Brand setzen. Rettungskräfte sind trotz der Gefahr ständig unterwegs. Frances ist ein gewaltiges Sturmgebiet, rund 2-mal so groß wie die Bundesrepublik. Etwa 300 Kilometer Küste sind bedroht. Schon jetzt sind in dem Urlaubsgebiet viele Sandstrände weggespült, Yachten und Motorboote von den Leinen gerissen. Viele treiben führerlos im Meer. Frances bewegt sich sehr langsam über das Land. Erst im Laufe des Tages wird er wohl seine tödliche Kraft ausspielen. Der Hurrikan bleibt bis zum Schluss unberechenbar. Erst wenn er morgen gen Norden gezogen ist, wird sich zeigen, ob er tatsächlich, wie befürchtet, der schlimmste Sturm in der Geschichte des Landes ist.
In Florida ist mein Kollege Stefan Bachenheimer. Ich habe vor kurzem mit ihm gesprochen und ihn gefragt, wie es den Menschen im Sturmgebiet ergeht.
Wir hatten bis vor wenigen Minuten hier Ruhe. Für vielleicht 1-2 Stunden war es fast windstill, denn das Auge des Hurrikans ist über uns hinweggezogen. Mittlerweile fangen die Winde aber wieder an und das heißt, jetzt heißt es Runde Nummer 2 für die Einwohner hier in Florida, in der Küste, in der Gegend von Vero Beach, Port Lucie, dort wo der Hurrikan aufgeschlagen ist. Und er zieht jetzt weiter Richtung Norden. Wir haben gehört hier im Radio, wir dürfen selber nicht aufstarten, es gibt nach wie vor eine Ausgangssperre, dass es auch einige Tornados gegeben hat in der gesamten Region, wo der Hurrikan aufgeschlagen ist, und das macht die Lage für viele Bewohner und die Einsatzkräfte natürlich besonders schwierig, denn die Anweisungen, wie man sich verhalten soll, sind beim Hurrikan und beim Tornado diametral entgegengesetzt. Das heißt, beim Hurrikan muss man sich wegen der drohenden Überschwemmungen in die oberen Stockwerke begeben. Bei Tornados muss man sich schnell im Keller verbergen. Also hier kann es durchaus Verwirrung geben. Die Situation ist nach wie vor noch nicht entspannt.
One state is at a standstill. Coming up on World News, Florida toughs it out for the long haul as Hurricane Frances threatens an overextended and destructive visit. And residents of the Bahamas also know Frances's fury firsthand. We'll get the latest of the situation there too. Stay with us.
It's going to rain some more. So look ahead here. I'm just going to get around here so we can look on top.
Frances has left a wake of destruction in the Bahamas island chain, parts of which are still being pummeled by the hurricane. More on the situation there from Carl Penhall, who is in Freeport on Grand Bahama Island.
If Grand Bahama is anything to judge by, then Florida can expect that the tail of Hurricane Frances could be even more vicious than the leading edge. That's certainly been the case here in Freeport and the rest of Grand Bahama Island. The first leading edge came through on Friday afternoon and seemed surprisingly unpowerful compared to what we've seen in the course of Friday. The island has really taken a pounding. According to the assistant police commissioner here, at least one man has been found dead, drowned. Another man, an 80-year-old, is still listed as missing. His house was completely flattened by these powerful winds. There's no sign of him as yet. In fact, the winds at one stage were so powerful that the police and other emergency service were all battened down too. They couldn't go on patrol. They couldn't attend to the tens of or even hundreds of emergency calls they were receiving from frightened residents as roofs blew off buildings and residents were forced to scurry and try and seek refuge either on roofs of their houses, on the roofs of other houses, or even with the neighbors. Police have told us now, though, that winds are dying down, that the tail of Hurricane Frances now seems to have passed over the island, and they will begin their full damage assessment tomorrow. but certainly beyond that, one death and one man missing. No other reports as yet of death and injuries, but we do believe there is widespread damage. All the power is out on Grand Bahama. The telephone lines are out, the cellular phone lines are out, and the last remaining radio station that was broadcasting here fell silent a short while ago. The power and the satellite signal to that radio station now out also. Carl Penhall, CNN, Freeport, Grand Bahama.
The only good news out of this storm is that its top winds were 105 miles, sustained. That compared to Charlie just 3 weeks ago at 145 miles an hour. That additional 40 miles per hour is exponential in the amount of structural damage that a hurricane will do.
Senator Nelson, good luck to all of the Florida residents down there. Thanks for spending a few moments with you. We'll try to get back to you later today.
Thanks, Wolf.
At the top of the hour, we'll have updates from all of our reporters stationed all across storm-battered Florida. We'll talk with the mayors of West Palm Beach and Orlando. I'll also speak live with the president of the American Red Cross, that organization mounting its largest ever relief effort underway right now. Stay with our special late editions for all the latest on Hurricane Francis. Another hour coming up next.
As Hurricane Francis cuts a plodding path across the low-lying U.S. state of Florida. 4 million people are already without power. Heavy flooding reported in the Bahamas as well. The island chain was pummeled for days by this slow-moving storm. Grand Bahama Island is still feeling the fury. Close on the heels of Francis, Hurricane Ivan formed in the central Atlantic on Sunday. It could reach the Bahamas by Friday.
Man mit dem Schlimmsten gerechnet. Dort löste der Wirbelsturm Francis die größte Evakuierungsaktion in der Geschichte des US-Bundesstaates aus. 2,5 Millionen Menschen waren aufgefordert worden, sich in Sicherheit zu bringen. Zehntausende flüchteten sich in Notunterkünfte. Obwohl Milliarden Schäden befürchtet werden, scheint die ganz große Naturkatastrophe auszubleiben.
Seit der Nacht hämmert Francis auf die Ostküste Floridas ein. Der Hurrikan hat weniger Kraft als befürchtet, aber er zieht ungewöhnlich langsam weiter. Für Florida heißt das viel Wind und noch mehr Regen, manchmal bis zu einem halben Meter. In den Notunterkünften bangen die Menschen, häufig ohne jede Nachricht, wie es in ihrer Nachbarschaft gerade aussieht. Es ist keiner mehr da, der nachschauen könnte. Es ist schrecklich, nur sitzen und warten zu können, dass dieser Sturm sich verzieht. Man weiß nicht, welcher Schaden gerade zu Hause entsteht und wie es anderen in der Familie wohl geht. Vielerorts gibt es Feuer, denn Stromleitungen hier sind oft überirdisch und im Sturm passiert dann das. Kurzschluss, Brand, trotz des vielen Regens. Die Behörden hatten rechtzeitig Evakuierungen angeordnet, vor allem weil viele Häuser im warmen Florida nicht aus Stein gebaut sind. Jetzt machen Vertreter der Staatsregierung sich Sorgen, dass die Bewohner zu ungeduldig werden könnten. Ich fordere alle Bewohner der betroffenen Gebiete auf, Ruhe zu bewahren und in den sicheren Notunterkünften zu bleiben. Der Sturm bewegt sich nur langsam und es wird noch dauern, bis er über die Halbinsel gezogen ist. Weil einige Bewohner leichtsinnig sind, kontrollieren Beamte in Militärfahrzeugen, ob die Ausgangssperre eingehalten wird. 3 Wochen nachdem 27 Menschen im Hurricane Charlie starben, wollen die Behörden kein Risiko eingehen. Meteorologen haben unterdessen den nächsten Hurricane auf dem Atlantik entdeckt. Sein Name Ivan.
People in Florida are assessing the damage from Hurricane Francis, and the storm hasn't even finished with the state yet. Now just a tropical storm, Francis is expected to come ashore on the Florida Panhandle Monday afternoon. Meantime, convoys of relief workers are headed to parts of eastern Florida devastated by Francis. Kathleen Koch joins us now from one of these areas, St. Augustine, Florida. Kathleen, how do things look?
Well, Relitza, actually, authorities say that this northeast corner of Florida, St. Augustine, St. Johns County, fared quite well. St. Augustine is the oldest city in the country, founded by Spain back in 1565, and it had a lot of the old historic trees come down, a lot of damage from branches. They knocked out much of the power here. 2/3 of the county is without power. But the old, beautiful buildings have not been damaged. Different story throughout the rest of the state. Governor Jeb Bush has declared a state of emergency throughout the entire state. There have been 2 deaths reported attributed to Hurricane Francis. 8,000 National Guard troops have been deployed throughout the state, not only to help in the cleanup, but stop looting, because some 2.8 million people evacuated their homes and businesses. So there is a lot of opportunity for that sort of thing to go on. 88,000 people roughly are in shelters. One of the things right now that is going to be very difficult to calculate, even in the areas such as St. Augustine that didn't have severe catastrophic storm damage, will be the impact from the loss of tourism dollars. This is a city that gets 7% of its annual tourism income from the Labor Day weekend. Now, we have with us a local business owner, Andy Fleming. He runs a lunch encounter, an old-fashioned lunch counter toy shop. Andy, we saw you boarding up back on Thursday. What's been the impact of the storm on your business?
Well, people have been in a wait-and-see mode for a number of days. Business was slow. We stayed open for a while. We closed yesterday and today, and probably tomorrow till we get power. My servers aren't making any tips. My cooks aren't making any wages.
So basically, what will this mean by the time, say, you get electricity back, maybe in 36 hours? Will this be, what, an entire week of income you've lost?
We've lost a week, plus we've lost the Labor Day weekend, which is a big chunk of change. So it's gonna take a while to recover from this.
What does this area, then, business owners like yourself, what do you need most right now?
Well, we need people to come visit. You know, if you had plans to come to Florida, just check where you're going and come see. Most of the tourism industry in the state is up and running. I'm sure we'll be back up and running in a day or two. And don't change your plans or make some new plans and come help us out.
Now, we saw that you have a generator running outside your restaurant trying to keep your food cold, the ice cream frozen solid. What about the boards on the windows? Are you going to be taking those down anytime soon?
No, I might leave them up for another week or so till Ivan goes by, or see if Ivan's not going to come here. So we're going to put a big "We're Open" sign on it so people know that they can come in and get some food and fun.
Andy, thank you so much. And Relitza, much of what's happening here now is that we're beginning to see thousands and thousands of Floridians heading back south. This was a corner of the state people thought would not get struck by Francis. They came here seeking refuge. And now with this area without power, they're saying, well, we may as well go home and see how things are. So there's a massive migration south. But officials are saying people need to be extraordinarily careful. There are a lot of downed trees, downed power lines, impassable roads partially washed out. So they're really discouraging people from hitting the roads too soon because it could be quite nasty out there. Relitza.
And what are they saying about the fact that another hurricane is gaining strength by the name of Ivan? What are they telling people about that? It could possibly hit to the South Florida coast by next weekend.
Well, it goes without saying, Relitza, that is exactly what this area does not need. The state has already gotten the 1-2 punch from Charlie on August 13th, a very devastating hurricane to the Punta Gorda area. Now, this hurricane, which has hit virtually the entire state. But again, people here are eternal optimists. But as Andy said, a lot of them already have the boards up on the windows. They'll just leave them there for another week, leave the sandbags in place, and hope for the best.
Certainly people are probably very relieved. There was a lot of talk about cabin fever since this was such an unusual hurricane. It just lingered and stayed forever, causing a lot of flooding, a lot of damage.
Very true, and that's what I think led to the surprising number of people that we saw out even here yesterday at the height of the storm when we had winds gusting above 60 miles an hour. We saw incredible numbers of people out on the ocean front where the waves were crashing over and threatened really to knock people into the water at any moment. They were out there playing in it. I think people were just tired of being locked up. But again, people are getting out now. The weather is improving, but there is still some danger out there with debris, with branches down, and with power lines down.
Kathleen Koch in St. Augustine, Florida. Thank you very much.
And some very punishing weather on the other side of the planet. A Chinese government official says he has never seen floods like those now plaguing the southwest part of that country. Disaster relief officials say at least 90 people are dead or missing. More on the story now from Andrew Stevens.
Days of heavy rain have caused flash flooding and widespread mud and rock flows in southwestern and central parts of China. There's been widespread damage in Sichuan province, the city of Dazhou among the hardest hit. Government officials say rising floodwaters inundated roads and cut off electricity, leaving about 250,000 people stranded and sparking panic buying in the markets. In parts of the town, floodwaters are 1 metre or about 3 feet deep in the streets. Several towns in the province are now cut off by rising floodwaters. The official Xinhua news agency said villages have been swamped and huge swathes of farmland flooded. One report says an entire village disappeared after all 1,200 residents were evacuated. In neighbouring Chongqing province, 1,500 kilometres or about 900 miles south of Beijing, an estimated 56,000 houses have been damaged and 82,000 people forced to flee their homes in the capital Chongqing. In one town outside the city, officials say flooding was the worst in 200 years. Torrential rains have been falling in southwestern China since Thursday. In one 24-hour period between Friday and Saturday, more than 250 millimetres of rain, that's about 10 inches, fell. And officials are warning that the bad weather is set to continue at least until Tuesday. Andrew Stevens, CNN, Hong Kong.
Hurricanes in the United States, flooding in China, and there's actually even more weather to talk about.
And the person who will be doing that talking, Femi Oke, joins us now with the International Weather Forecast. Femi?
Hello there. Well, I promise not to take over the rest of the show, but I will take over the next couple of minutes as we talk about Typhoon Songda, already affecting the southernmost part of Japan. Let me show you the sort of damage it's done already to the island of Kyushu. And this is Japan's most southernmost island, bracing for this typhoon. Wind speeds still very fierce, and the storm battered Okinawa after the weekend, injuring so far 21 people, cutting off power, stranding tourists there as well. And I want to take you across to another natural disaster, this time not meteorology but seismology. The two aren't connected. Meanwhile, Japan's Tokai region has been hit by intense aftershocks from 2 earthquakes. At least 38 people were injured in Sunday's powerful tremors, and they struck within hours of each other near the same spot on the coast of south of Honshu. So Japan has earthquakes plus tropical weather still to contend with. This is where our typhoon is right now, the southernmost part of Japan, heading further up towards the north and the west, eventually hitting cooler water where it will begin to actually die down or lose some of its strength. But right now, all along this western coastline of Japan, really at risk from those fierce waves and storm surge, which is basically flooding associated with a storm of this intensity. We can see our typhoon making its way further up towards the north, sucking in a lot of moisture from the surrounding area. Just a little bit behind it, following in its tracks, is a tropical storm. Not fully developed yet, but keeping an eye on this one. This one looks like it's going to take a more abrupt turn further up towards the north, heading in towards the island of Honshu, which is in central Japan, and moving at about 29 kilometers an hour, with wind speeds gusting up to 138 kilometers an hour. So it gives you an idea of how serious the weather is across Asia right now. Tokyo at 30, Vladivostok 24 degrees in Celsius, and heading down to Bangkok 35, just a little bit shy of 100 if you work in Fahrenheit. So you head back from Asia in towards Central Asia and then down towards the Arabian Peninsula. Really clear skies here, a little bit of high cloud there, but not doing too badly at all. Perhaps a few showers through that southern section of the Red Sea, but with that high pressure, endless sunshine, which of course means endless heat. Take note, Baghdad, 47, 45 there for Kuwait City. Seriously hot there, 36 for Muscat. And as we head across through Africa, this is where Atlantic hurricanes are born. Across through this west coast of Africa, where you see that intense amount of rainfall here, those big clusters of thunderstorms and showers, once they hit in towards the Atlantic Ocean, that's where they get the fuel to fuel up and develop into something more significant. Also have wet weather just moving through the Mozambique Channel, heading towards Joburg, and also into Harare there at 26, Joburg at 18 degrees in Celsius. Just want to show you what's brewing out there in the Atlantic. This is Hurricane Ivan. You may have heard Relitza just speaking about it a moment or two ago, heading in a westerly direction. Very similar path to the one that Francis took a few days ago. Relitza, back to you.
Thank you, Femi. Well, what the Bible called a bane, Australian snowboarders called a blessing. They took advantage of some freak weather conditions in Sydney, as you can see, speeding down icy slopes leading to the famous Bondi Beach. A hailstorm hit the city late Sunday with stones the size of ping pong balls. Surfers rode huge waves whipped up by the ice storm. Travelers by land and air, though, were not so lucky. There were minor traffic accidents reported, but no serious injuries or major damage.
Auch gefährlich.
Denn nach dem Sturm ist vor dem Sturm. Der Hurrikan Ivan ist bereits mit Windgeschwindigkeiten von mehr als 200 Stundenkilometern auf dem Weg Richtung Küste.
Um Haaresbreite hätte er den Einsatz mit dem Leben bezahlt. Ein anderer Reporter kann sich gerade so auf den Beinen halten, bei Windgeschwindigkeiten von bis zu 170 Stundenkilometern. Hurrikan Francis ist über Florida hinweggefegt, hat gewütet, zerstört. Naturgewalt, die lebensmüde Abenteurer offenbar unterschätzen. Und auch einige Anwohner, sie haben in ihren Häusern ausgeharrt. Wenn so ein Baum bricht, hört sich das an wie eine Explosion. Wir waren nervös und hatten Angst davor, was hier passieren würde. Die meisten Einwohner Floridas aber waren geflüchtet. Nun kehren sie zurück. In Orte ohne Strom, ohne Trinkwasserversorgung. Das Dach über dem Kopf hat Hurrikan Francis vielen genommen. Ein Polizist markiert Häuser. Hier wird niemand mehr wohnen. Bedauerlicherweise hat es die Nachbarn getroffen. Uns ist zum Glück nichts passiert. Jetzt packen wir alle mit an beim Aufräumen. Versicherungen schätzen die Schäden auf bis zu 8 Milliarden Euro. Damit nicht genug. Francis und Hurrikan Charlie haben die Menschen in Florida gerade hinter sich. Da haben die Meteorologen schon die nächste Hiobsbotschaft parat. In der Karibik braut sich Hurrikan Ivan zusammen. Er könnte Ende dieser Woche Florida erreichen.
But you can see how much rain is just heading further up through into Alabama, through that Florida panhandle, and up through that southern section of Georgia. So not out of the woods yet. Still, we could see an awful lot of flooding until about Wednesday, when it begins, as it goes across land, to die down considerably more. And as you head through that southern section of the US, through the southeast, here's where we're expecting to see, because of the rain, because of the wind, a lot of travel delays. So do be patient if you're heading in that general direction. Now, as I head through that from that west coast of Africa, heading across to that central part of the Atlantic, this is Hurricane Ivan, and this is also where a lot of our hurricanes develop in the Atlantic, right the way across, and those big clusters of thunderstorms and showers develop once they hit the warm waters of the Atlantic at this time of year. Right now, Category 3. Heading through that southernmost part of the Lesser Antilles, so about Wednesday, Thursday time, heading towards that southern section of Hispaniola. Anywhere in that lightened area really needs to take care and watch a local rather than the international forecast, or perhaps both of them together to give you the best possible information.
Much of the center is being assessed as we speak. We have what we call DART teams, D-A-R-T, which stands for Disaster Assessment Response Team. And we have a total of 500 people assigned to the DART teams. Some of those do not have the ability to get to the center and participate yet, although most are certainly trying as we speak. As of this morning, we had about 200 of the 500 members of the team, and the preliminary assessment would be as follows. The VAB is certainly the most visible in terms of damage to facilities. As you look at the south and east walls of the VAB, we have an estimated 1,000 panels that have been ripped off, and that would include typically not only the outer panel, but the insulation, and in some cases a sub-panel behind it to where it's like an open window to the VAB. If we lost 1,000 panels, each panel is sized at 4 feet by 10 feet. So we have a total of approximately 40,000 square feet of open window on the VAB. The good news is that we don't have much critical flight hardware in the VAB. We do have 2 external tanks, but they are somewhat enclosed within their integration cells, and we think are probably protected from the elements, but we're assessing that this afternoon. I can't speak to that for sure. We also have the first 2 aft skirts that came from the assembly and refurbishment facility over the last 6 weeks that are in the VAB. I believe they're both secured to a respective MLP, but again, I don't know that for sure. Those are the principal set of assets that are in the VAB. The VAB was principally being used for storage of cars and trucks and the like to keep them protected from the elements. So VAB is something of concern, not only because of the initial damage, but because of the potential that Ivan brings to us. Our weather people tell us that Ivan could be at the back door of KSC as early as next Saturday, And so part of our priority is going to see what can we do to protect the VAB from further loss of property. The problem that we have across the center deals with lack of power and loss of phones. The only facility that seems to have full power right now is the Space Station Processing Facility. The power has been brought back up in OPF days 1 and 2, but it's still down for OPF 3. Day 3 is where we have OV-103 Discovery, the next vehicle, scheduled for the first return to flight launch. The Tile facility, which is located out in the general area of the OPFs and VAB, has taken significant loss. We believe that the roof is partially gone, has extensive water damage within the facility, and while that could possibly be a very difficult situation for us to deal with, because I know that tile manufacturing is to some extent on the critical path of return to flight. You may know that this activity was transferred to the Kennedy Space Center from Palmdale, and we are looking at the possibility of Palmdale as a backup site while we bring the GPS facility at KSC back online. Station hardware looks pretty good. Intermittent loss of power, intermittent loss of purge capability during the peak winds of the storm. But in the in the SSPF, they actually track the continuity of power and purge and only saw intermittent losses. There was no water damage in the facility. I forgot to mention on the OPF, the only water that got in is a little bit of water under doors. That primarily amounts to the need to mop it up. It's not an issue relative to getting water on any of the critical flight hardware. We don't know the impacts to any programs at this time. It's way too early for us to state that we do or don't have a problem, but as you know, we were working hard to protect the shuttle return to flight date of March, and we'll just have to see how that goes. The expendable launch vehicle, we had one payload, Swift, in the building AE over on the Cape Canaveral side. We don't have any feedback on Swift, but we believe the building is in good shape. And just as belts and suspenders, we put the spacecraft back into the shipping canister to give it double protection. So we suspect that payload is going to be in good shape, but we don't know for sure. Where we go from here, we're going to leave the DART team on site for the next 24 hours, and at noon tomorrow, we're going to have an extensive telecon with all of the stakeholders at the Kennedy Space Center to talk about what we know after 24 hours of the DART team being on site. And again, that's about 500 people doing extensive assessment of power, facilities, comm, and the like. So we hope to know more tomorrow at noon. I understand that at 2 o'clock tomorrow, Mike Ryan will be meeting those of you that are able to get to us and have such an interest. He will be meeting you at the Passing ID building on State Road 3. Mike will bring you on base. At that point, I would like to brief you on the latest information we have. Following that, Mike will give you an opportunity for a limited tour, and we'll see where that goes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Well, I know that you're pretty short on time, so we'll just go down the list, and if anyone could just ask one question, please. We'll start off with WFTV.
Yes, sir. I wanted to know the damage at the tile facility. Are you expecting that to further delay flight?
No, it's too early to call. We'll probably know more by tomorrow about the exact loss of it, but it's way too soon to call.
Thank you.
Okay, Associated Press?
Yes, hi. Jim, I was wondering, what was the sustained peak winds seen out there, and what were the highest gusts?
Yeah, I'm going to quote what I believe are the numbers. I think the highest sustained were in the 70s. I think the highest recorded peak wind was 94 at Mosquito Lagoon. There were some numbers higher, but our weather people seriously challenged whether or not they could be accurate readings based upon a lot of meteorological information that I wouldn't begin to understand. But we believe the quotable peak for us was 94 miles per hour at Mosquito Lagoon.
Okay, CBS Radio.
Peter King at CBS. Mr. Kennedy, I don't know if I missed it or not because I was distracted for a moment, but could you talk to me a little bit about the OPF and the orbiters, please?
Yeah, power was down on all three OPFs. It's now been brought back up on OPF 1 and 2. OPF 3 is a priority to get it brought back up. The facilities experienced no apparent damage in terms of water leakage through the roof that might have gotten on the vehicle. The only water intrusion was underneath the large doors, and that's just a matter of mopping up that water. I specifically asked the shuttle community if they were concerned at all about the loss of power and purge for as much as 24, 36 hours, and the answer was not really. It's like a day where you roll it outside and it stays in the Florida atmosphere for a day. So might have had some minor violations of specifications, but they, as they sit today, and again this is all preliminary, but as they stand today, they were not concerned about the qualifications of the orbiter's ability to withstand some of the humidity and temperature that they were exposed to.
Okay, new scientist?
Is there any indication how much the damage to the VAB will affect future operations?
Too early to tell. It's certainly a high priority for us. As you think about things that are time critical, the VAB repair is one for us. Not only because we need the VAB to process hardware, but I am concerned about Ivan and 40,000 square feet of the window exposed to Ivan. And I will tell you that the preliminary input from the facilities folks was that they really didn't know how, with 5 days notice before Ivan arrived, how we could do much a temporary repair of those openings. But again, you put the P word preliminary on that too. But they had great concern for how they might be able to do that just a few days' time.
Thank you.
AFT?
Do you have any damage on the launch pad?
I did not get out to the pads yet. We'll certainly have information on that after tomorrow's 12 o'clock telecom. But the pad was not something that they had been able to get to at the time of our 12 o'clock telecom today. More to come tomorrow.
Okay, Florida Today, and either Todd or Chris, just for timing's sake.
Mr. Kennedy, I wanted to ask you about the panels on the VAB. Are those the kind of gray-colored movable panels that are able to be open and closed? Is that the panels we're talking about?
No, Todd, you're thinking about the doors. The panels are basically the exterior skin of the VAB. And again, they come in size. Apparently, they're all the same size, 4 by 10 feet. But it's not the doors you're talking about. No. To my knowledge, those doors are not damaged.
Okay, just a real quick follow then. I guess I'm picturing about 40,000 square feet that's open to the elements. Is that the situation?
Well, I don't know that all of it's open to the elements because some of it has backing material, whether it's a backup panel or some insulating material behind it. I did have some information about where it is. It goes up to like 350 feet level and comes down to about the 100-foot level. It's not all continuous, by the way. It's not 1,000 panels all missing for one continuous opening of 40,000 square feet. It is multiple locations, more like a checkerboard square.
Okay, government executive.
Hi, Jim. That's Vicki. Did I understand you to say that the SSPF is the only facility out there that did not have an electrical outage?
I believe that's pretty much true, Beth. It's certainly up and running now, but their only loss was intermittent loss, and we are rapidly trying to get the critical facilities back up with power. Like I said, OPF 1 and 2 is back up again with power and consumables.
This is Mike Ryan, Mr. Kennedy's PAO. Just to remind everybody, if you didn't hear, a lot of the facilities on the channel, we brought the power down prior to the storm. So we turned off power to like the press site. The press site had no power going into the storm. So it doesn't mean it's all lost, but it's critical. That's for the critical facilities.
And I will add to that it's more difficult to bring power back up than it is to bring power down. Like Mike said, we depowered many facilities that did not have the critical need for power. For fear that you might get surges in the power line if it does. But bringing the power back up is much more difficult than it is to bring down. So we hope tomorrow to give you a better story on how much is back up by then.
Okay, New York Times.
Yes, thanks so much. I would like to know, is the damage a function of the height of the buildings there? Like, for example, the VAB sustained more damage because it is higher, and at what height did you have the most damage?
I think the damage started at about the 100-foot level and went to the 350-foot level, I believe, but whether it's a function of height, I couldn't tell you. I suspect our meteorologist, John Madura, could say more. I will speculate it's also a function of the sail area. If you have that much area exposed to the wind, it creates quite a sail and quite a bit of back pressure on the structure.
Okay, NASA Watch. Now keep telling NASA Watch, with all the problems that the VAB has had with its roof, are there any indications that the storm made that worse or that water got through some of the existing damage?
Have not inspected the roof yet, Keith. Probably by tomorrow, that'll be a part of our more comprehensive assessment.
Houston Chronicle?
Mark Carreau from the Houston Chronicle. Mr. Kennedy, could you talk a little bit about what options you're looking at to protect the VAB from Ivan? And also, if you guys could review how high the VAB is and what those panels are made of, please.
Yeah, I think there are aluminum panels, but I'll have to get that for sure.
Well, they're metal anyway.
Yeah. And we think the overall height of the VAB is 560-ish kind of feet. That's just the memory that Mike and I are able to come up with.
Okay.
From our data bank. Yeah, another question that I can't answer. The very first question you had.
Well, I think you expressed concern about another storm coming.
Oh yeah.
Critical building open, and what kind of barnstorming are you do? Can you get a contractor in there? Do you think, or can you put some sort of flexible covering on there? Or is that really no good?
I don't know. Again, the only thing I know is that the facilities people on the telecom this morning said they had serious reservations about our ability for a temporary patch of the openings in the VAB. And that if Ivan comes our way, obviously we're going to prepare for the worst and hope for the best here, but if Ivan came our way, we may not be able to have any temporary patches. We'll just have to see what it does to the vehicle. And who knows, with the innovation of this agency, maybe somebody will have some temporary fixes for us tomorrow that we're not aware of today.
Discovery News?
Hi, it's Irene Kloss. There's several trailers out at the Space Center, some of the offices, several at the press site too. Do you have any information on if those are still there and if there was any damage from that?
Yeah, I have not heard a word about the trailers. Clearly they would not be as high a priority for us as the critical processing facilities. But I can't answer that today. Maybe tomorrow.
Okay, CNN.
Jim, if there's a God in heaven, our CNN trailer has been blown to kingdom come. That's all I can hope for. First of all, will the Dark team today have a NASA TV crew with them? Will there be any tape fed today?
No. Miles, no tape today. We'll have some filming opportunities tomorrow, too.
Yeah, Miles, a lot of my cameraman evacuators as well, and I'm rounding them up, and I'm pretty sure I'll have folks in there tomorrow, but we just can't facilitate.
You got a digital camera?
I'm working at it from here, but I just can't make a promise for that today.
Would love a JPEG if you could send it to us.
I'll just tell you I'll do my best.
Okay, that's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks for your coverage, Miles.
My pleasure.
Okay, USA Today.
Hi, it's Tracy Watson, Mr. Kennedy. First of all, can you tell me if the VAB has, how many panels the VAB has? I'm just trying to get a sense of the percentage of panels that go away. And second of all, if you could put this in context for us, how does Francis rank as in terms of the damage it did compared to other hurricanes?
Yeah, I have no idea the total panels. We can certainly take an action, and maybe when we talk tomorrow, we can give you that. I don't know what percentage the 1,000, and the 1,000 was a rough estimate based on people standing back and just trying to get a rough idea on how many was lost. But we'll try and give you more on that tomorrow.
And in terms of history?
Yeah. I've only been in Florida this past for the last year and a half to 2 years, so I don't have a lot of first-hand history. But I will tell you that I'm told that the Space Coast of Florida has been very fortunate since we've been tracking hurricanes back pre-1900, and that for whatever reason, most storms, even those that seem to be tracking our way, end up getting caught in some kind of a steering current that takes it elsewhere. So this is probably the worst one that has hit the Kennedy Space Center and the Space Coast. Obviously, it did more damage the farther south you go, down towards Fort Pierce and Vero Beach and West Palm, but we were close enough to get our share of damage, and I think it is the worst that the KSC has experienced since its inception back in the early 60s.
Spaceflight Now?
This is Stephen Young with Spaceflight Now. I'm wondering what your feelings were this morning when you were going into work, and whether the damage was as you'd expected given the kind of the storm, or whether you were surprised by how much you actually received.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I am not at work yet. Mike and myself and my associate director and a few others took the NASA plane to a safe haven. I'm currently in Crystal City, Virginia, right outside of NASA headquarters in our national capital. But we are going back this afternoon at 3 o'clock and plan on being on site later today. I will tell you, from those initial responders who called us first thing this morning, the initial feeling was that we had dodged a big bullet. If you think about what we believed we might have to deal with, 5, 6, 7 days ago, was a hurricane Category 4, possibility of growth to a 5, and a direct hit to the Kennedy Space Center. And I was significantly worried about the future of human spaceflight based upon that doomsday scenario. So when they drove on site today and they saw most of the buildings intact, very few trees down, most of the power lines still up, things like light poles and parking lots were down, signage was down and laying across the road, but it wasn't the appearance of a war zone like we have seen on some of your reporting outlets. It wasn't like that, so I feel very fortunate that it's as minimal as it is.
Okay, CBS News, Bill Howard.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me? Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Well, let me just follow up on that one. If your sustained winds were 74 miles an hour, which is barely Category 1, and you mentioned Ivan, I just wonder, your doomsday scenario, it strikes me that if you ever did take a hit by a 3, 4, or heaven forbid a 5, this almost shows that it really would be potentially into human spaceflight as we know it. Would you give me your thoughts on that with Ivan coming, and would you call this a disaster or a bump in the road at this point?
Well, I don't want to speculate on what possible worst damage bill we could have with a Category 2, 3, 4, 5 direct hit. It would certainly be significant to the future of human spaceflight. I will tell you that I don't consider this to be a disaster by any stretch of the imagination. How big the bump in the road is to be determined. It's a bump in the road for sure. You may or may not know, Bill, that with Hurricane Charlie that just kissed the northern tip of Kennedy Space Center with the south eye wall as it passed across Volusia County, we took a $700,000 damage. That's the complete list of damage from Charlie. This one is going to be significantly more than that. But how significant, I don't know. So how big the bump in the road is, we don't know. But we certainly are aggressively going to pursue quantifying just that. And I think the 500 cart numbers will make a lot of progress over the next 24 to 48 hours.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
ABC News, Gina Fairfield. Okay, did anyone join us that I didn't get initially? That hasn't asked the question yet.
Howard, this is Chris Kreidler. Could I ask one question, please?
Sure, absolutely.
Do you plan to bring the rest of the workforce back this week?
Yeah, Chris, I don't know when the workforce is coming back. We had a extensive telecon at noon today, and for many, many reasons, the safety of the workforce, if they did come back, for example, there are panels on the VAB that may very well continue to fall if they were loosened by the storm, and we're still getting a lot of wind, by the way. I was told this morning we're getting 15 gusting to 20 even today. So I think there are safety reasons not to bring the people back. There are reasons like the lack of the ability to air condition our facilities, lack of communications once you get on site. We are told that the local authorities are encouraging people to stay off the roads unless it's absolutely essential. For all of those reasons, we plan to declare tomorrow a work day only for those employees necessary to get the center back up and running, which is primarily the dirt team. But we certainly don't want to stay off any longer than we have to. And we have not yet declared tomorrow a day of no work. I like to coordinate those with the commander of the 45th Space Wing and do these things together, and we have yet been able to make contact. So I suspect we will declare it so, Chris, but until I talk to Colonel Owen, the new commander of the 45th, we're going to hold back on that declaration.
Okay, I think John Schwartz, New York Times, was also on.
I simply was going to ask if at this time there's any way to give a cost estimate. You gave $700,000 before. I realized it would be preliminary, but any sort of ballpark estimate would be helpful.
So the $700,000 was for Charlie.
Yes, I understand. You said $700,000.
Itemized down to the window outage and a tree down kind of thing. For Francis, we have no numbers, and I would certainly not want to speculate on what it might be. The DART team has a very structured process where they identify everything that has to be done to bring the center back to standard, and we will have that number. But as I recall with Charlie, which again was significantly less than this would end up being, it was probably about a week before we had all that made in. So I would say it might be a week or two for Francis to understand the full impact. We'll share it with you as soon as we have it.